you do.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is be like super confident and wrong.
Yeah, right, exactly. You want to at least be always questioning. Like always maintaining that possibility. I could be wrong about everything.
When you go over stuff, like when you talk about like libertarian ideas, you look at like the way the government is run now, do you run through that thought process? Like maybe the only way to do it is the way we're doing it right now.
Yeah, I try my best to always do that. I mean, I'm guilty of not doing it, but I try my best to always be like, okay, well, maybe, theoretically, they know something I don't know, which kind of means like this is the best way to do it, or maybe I'm just wrong and my theoretical model couldn't work and this is the best, but that try to give like the toughest arguments against it, and then go like, okay, but we still didn't need to kill 1 million Iraqis. You know what I mean? Like we still didn't need to do this, or we still at least didn't need to, but I try my best. It's dangerous because the further into it I get, the more convinced I am that I'm right, and then that's also dangerous because I'm not as insecure about it as I used to be.
It feels like the only way, like the system is broken. Everyone sort of agrees. And the only way to do it right would be to create a more ethical, moral, logical system that's actually based on constitutional rights and how the government is supposed to be, in terms of like the kind of power they're supposed to have versus what they're always constantly trying to acquire. But if you did that, how much would you have to blow the system up, and how would we run things? Like what period of vulnerability would we have while we're trying to reestablish a new system, and how would we know if the system could even work correctly without being influenced by money and power and all the shit that's fucked it up for what we've got right now?
It's a daunting challenge. I think that, like what Ron Paul used to always say was basically, I mean, these are my words, not his, but it was basically his plan was he goes, end all the worst shit first. Like, end all the most evil shit first. So the first thing is like, stop bombing third world countries, stop locking people in jail for victimless crimes, stop bailing out billionaires and corporations and stuff. Like, stop that first. You know, you don't start with like, well, okay, if there's a vulnerable population that's like dependent on this government program, get rid of it tomorrow. You know, so like you try to do that, and then the more of the corruption that you roll back, you're going to see less wealth being extracted from regular American people and going to special interests, kind of build that up over time. But it's a challenging thing to go from this insane system to something less insane.
Right.
Is tough, and throughout human history, usually there's a pretty rough period.
Sure.
There. It's usually not a smooth transition.
Well, it's kind of fascinating when you think that this is the only country that has been really established as like a colony that went on to take over the world. And it did it inside of 300 years, which is pretty fucking wild.
Yeah, that's the most wild part, is the time span.
It's pretty crazy.
Because going from being a republic to an empire has happened before, but we're the most powerful empire in world history, at least in terms of like raw power,
right?
Like the technology, the level of wealth, all that shit, and we did it in a very short time.
And some of the most unexceptional people are the ones who want to run it, which is so weird. When you see like the Squad, did you see that debate that she was having with those bankers, where they were talking about eliminating fossil fuels?
She made me root for the bankers, Joe.
I was rooting for the bankers.
Dude, it is quite a feat
and
to get me to say, I think the head of Goldman Sachs is making a good point.
Imagine that she was dangling the carrot of the $10,000 we gave back in student loan debt forgiveness, that those people are going to have bank accounts. And those people that got that free money are going to take that free money out of your bank account. Like, that was the immediate thing that she dangled, which lets you know some of the incentive involved in giving student loan debt. It's not really that we want to help these people. It's that now we will have influence over those people for voting.
Oh, this was clearly like just throwing a carrot like pre-midterm
Right. It's only, how about only 10,000? How about all of it?
Right.
If you're going to really absolve student loan debt, if someone's $700,000 in the hole or whatever, what's like worst case scenario? If someone goes to med school,
oh yeah, if they do all of that,
PhD,
probably 300-400 at least.
Yeah,
probably.
and then it compounds with interest over the decades. Like, I was reading a story about this woman who took out $150,000 in student loans and she hasn't been able to pay them back, and now she's $250,000 in the hole.
Jeez. And they're the most vicious type of loans too.
Of course,
like it's easier to get out of credit card debt. You know, you can't even get out through bankruptcy. Yeah.
People are having their Social Security docked. People who've made it to the end of life They're relying on government assistance, right? It's essentially government assistance that we pay for, and they're getting that docked to pay for student loan debt.
Yeah, it's such a fucked up system. Like, I'm completely against student loan debt, just forgiving the debt, just because I think it's just you're just punishing the taxpayers for the debt of in many cases a more privileged group. It's like the people who didn't go to college now have to bail out the people who did, But
Yo, what up, Dick?
It's such a fucked up system that they trap these 18-year-old
What's up,
kids
homie?
into signing up.
I do, my
no
man.
one at the colleges even. Like, the fact, I mean,
Julio,
obviously the
no
politicians
way.
are like soulless and the bankers are just trying to make money, but that no one
Get
in
out of town.
the university ever has the basic human decency to look at one of these kids who goes, hey, you're spending 150 grand
I hate
on
this
a gender
fucking
studies
doing
major?
X.
Just think
I hate
about
it.
that. Think about whether or not this is really a good idea. They just go, oh, okay, we'll take the money.
Well, all
no
they're
problem.
hoping is they're going to get a job in university.
Right.
If
It's a
you-
Ponzi scheme,
yeah.
basically. You'll teach this to other people until no one's signing up for this anymore. You'll learn useless shit that isn't even true, and then you'll teach it to other people who want to learn this useless shit to teach it to other people. And let's just hope we keep getting new investors into this thing until it all.
You know, right into her clip.
What's
Yo,
really
me
wild
too, man. That
is
sucks, dude.
Most, especially tech companies, they're so progressive and so liberal, and they're kind of trapped in that ideology, which can hamper what they want to do, what they're allowed to do with their company, because you get activists who are employees. So your employees become, and they go straight from universities where they're indoctrinated into this ideology, and then they permeate these tech companies. And some of them are fucked. And
Yeah.
some of them are
Gonna eat?
realizing it. They're
Cool,
pushing
man.
back, and they go,
Do it, buddy.
Stop. You guys are killing
It's gonna be a
our
really,
stock.
really
You're
boring
fucking up
session.
the business. Like, it's a giant loss in terms of like whether or not
Do
it's
it,
good
homie.
for the overall company. It's a giant loss for some of them. Like Netflix.
Yeah.
Netflix took a giant hit after all that Chappelle shit.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, I mean, it just, and if you think about, like, with the tech censorship stuff, if you think about, like, in, 2014, 2015, this basically didn't exist. And this isn't that long ago that you kind of could say whatever you wanted to. Yeah, I'll have a little bit, thank you. You could say whatever you wanted to on Twitter. More or less. I mean, I remember, really wild people saying crazy shit on Twitter. And there was never even a thought, oh, you're going to get kicked off for saying this. It was just like, it's the
Get
internet.
affiliate? Oh,
That's Twitter.
dang, man.
YouTube, you
Yo,
can say
good
what
luck,
you want.
man.
But
I won't be able to be there lurking to help you
that's
get
the other thing
3
that's very
viewers,
weird,
dude.
that what
Hell yeah, man.
is
You,
allowed and
you
what's
deserve
not
it, bro.
allowed.
Which I'm for.
Out of everybody, you deserve it the most. Not there's any competition, but you deserve it, buddy.
They want to post pictures of them fucking. and
Oh,
videos.
yo, what? Robbie Rat
I
what?
also-
Robbie
yeah,
Rat Poison,
completely
thanks,
against any
man.
of the censorship. I think
Thanks,
it's an
dude.
awful
I have
slippery
no idea what I'm doing here.
slowdown.
Giant slippery slope, and it shouldn't be navigated by people
Thanks,
who
buddy.
are, again, indoctrinated into the system that they get straight out of universities, and they're,
Yo,
they're
what up?
locked into these progressive
Thanks,
ideas.
thanks,
Yeah,
Robbie.
I
Appreciate that,
agree
man.
with all that, but I mean, so the point I was just making is when you talk about the bottom line. So you
What?
could see
Yo,
why
what up? What up,
originally back then, why they
Sklurm?
weren't kicking people off of their platforms because, there's no incentive
Sklurm, yo,
for them to
what
kick
up?
people off the platform. The whole point is
Shout
they
out,
want
yo,
people to
shout
be
out
on their
Robbie Rat
platform.
Poison,
There'd
man.
certainly be no incentive to kick really popular people off of their platform. That's that's how they get people onto their platform. And there is a lot of truth to the fact that a lot of these kids coming out of the universities came in with this woke ideology, but there was also tremendous pressure from the top coming down.
Okay, something's
So,
not,
what
right.
really sparked all of it was in 2016 once Trump won. And then Congress hauled all the heads of the big tech companies in
Yeah,
front of Congress,
something's,
basically
weird.
threatened the shit out of them. That look,
Now it's
Donald
all
Trump
right.
won, and here's why he won. He won because of fake news and Russian interference in social media, and so you guys got to do something to crack down on them. And you see that to this day. You see Alex Berenson, shared the evidence. I mean, he was able to get back on Twitter.
What's wrong? Oh, no, I'm
He
just...
shared that the White House specifically asked about Alex
So I'm
Berenson.
doing 2.x. I
Why are
rubber
they still on
banded
Twitter?
We read it.
the strafe,
Yeah,
right?
Quotes and who quoted them on the podcast.
I don't know.
Technically speaking, they didn't say.
I
"Kick
just gotta
Alex
work it
Berenson
out."
off of
Right.
Twitter.
What are you
But they-
doing
but
about it?
they
That's
did
right.
go, what are you doing? It's like this.
It's just,
mafia
I just
shit
gotta get
almost.
used
So
to it.
that's-
I just gotta,
you know,
I just gotta learn it.
Yes, you could kind of say
I just gotta
it's
get
not
used to it, I
exactly a
guess.
violation of the First Amendment because they just asked, but it's kind of like someone
How you doing, Robbie?
robbing
Thanks
you
for the raid, man.
by just asking
Saw you were
for your
playing
money
a
in an aggressive
different
way.
game.
Another more important point.
I don't know what it was.
He was right.
That is pretty important.
This is a very important point, which is why he's back on.
Yeah.
Well, he was citing studies. He was using the
Like,
Israeli
it's-
data. He
it
was
looks so
talking
slow.
to scientists that were willing to go outside of the company line. And there's quite a few of them. These are legit people.
Blame the big tech oligarchy.
what
Yeah,
he
really.
was getting in trouble for with the government was being correct.
Yeah.
Which is really crazy because you're talking about a health pandemic. So you're talking about decisions that could possibly either save people's lives, ruin people's lives, save people's health, ruin people's health. The only way you're going to know what's what is if you get accurate data. So if there's a guy
Hello,
who's talking
kill
about
that.
data, but the data's inconvenient to whatever the narrative is, if it's because it's inconvenient because the
I just wanna
pharmaceutical
see if
companies
this is, like,
fund
correct.
75% of all the ads on television.
There we go.
How many
See?
campaigns?
See?
and how much-
That's way
how much
better.
money do they
That's
have
way
invested in
faster.
this?
That's
And
correct.
Does the government actually have
See,
a
someone was
piece of
fucked. Someone was wrong.
Isn't that?
Well, there was Rand Paul. I don't know if you saw one of these moments where it was
Okay, we're good. We're
months
back.
ago now, where he was grilling Fauci in one of those
Yeah.
Rand Paul versus
Fake
Fauci
news.
moments, and he said that they found out through a Freedom of Information Act that it was something like $135 million in royalties.
Hey, man, I'm not
paid
judging.
out to scientists on the NIH, at the NIH from pharmaceutical companies. And he asks Fauci straight up, he goes, have you received any money? Will you disclose all the money you've received? And Fauci, in a roundabout way, was like, well, Dr. Paul, I think I may have had one royalty for very small money,
Big
but
boost.
now
That's
I
a
don't
big
need,
boost.
the law doesn't require me to reveal that. So like,
What
don't
the
you think,
fuck?
like, shouldn't we know that? Shouldn't we at least be able to know, like, how much money does Fauci make from
Yes.
Pfizer and Moderna? Because that seems like a tiny conflict of interest.
A giant conflict of interest.
So, but to your point with the Alex Berenson stuff, like, look, even if
That
he
truck
was
is in the way
wrong,
when you
he
don't
was
skip the cinema
right
quick
a lot
enough.
more than he
Yeah.
was wrong. Put his track record up against Fauci's track record over the last couple of years. He was
51,
right way
yeah,
more than
right.
Fauci was.
See,
But
like,
even
like
if he
I'm
was
not. That was a
wrong,
terrible gate,
theoretically,
but
he was making
Just-
data-based arguments.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't like they
Something- I don't know.
justified like tech censorship with like, well, what if someone's just like a Nazi preaching hate, or what if someone's intentionally spreading false information to change an election? But he wasn't doing any of that.
No.
He was just like a guy who worked for the New York Times. He was just a guy who was presenting sound arguments. And
I got
even if he
54
some
with
things
1.2.
The idea that we would shut that
Really
down,
way more comfortable with
really creepy,
1.2.
very creepy thing. And then that it's coming from the White House. It's coming directly from them. This isn't just like some random, it's not just that, oh, there's a company with a woke ideology who doesn't think you should be allowed to do this on their platform, like the kind of, almost the libertarian argument that some people make. Well, they're a private company, they can do what they want to do. But that's not what's happening. Here.
terrible.
Here you have the government who's saying silence
better be 39
our number
at
one
least.
critic to our policies
that's good.
of lockdowns and
See,
vaccine
that's-
mandates and all this.
I just gotta learn
It
it.
also affected that Hunter Biden story.
Yo, thanks for the raid. Thanks for the messages too.
I mean, wasn't that pretty incredible, dude? What Zuckerberg said to you?
It
I mean, there
was-
was. Look, you asked him about the Hunter Biden
It was
story,
terrible.
Yeah.
and his first response to
bad.
you was, "Well, here's what happened. The FBI told us there was going to be this misinformation, this Russian
Yeah.
misinformation coming." Now, I'm not saying the FBI told him specifically, you have to turn down the Hunter Biden story. But when you asked him about the Hunter Biden story, the first thing he
I missed
said
the view.
was, well, the FBI. So clearly, at least he took it that way. And then when the story came out, the FBI and the CIA and all these intelligence people are saying this has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden's bragging about this at the time. So if nothing else, they at least
Yo,
clearly
what
sent a
I'm
signal
and
to
in
these
white
companies
dust.
that, like, this is
See,
the one.
like I
This is what
saw.
we were
Right.
talking about.
Now, could you imagine if you're these people at Facebook? What do you do? Like, if
Yo,
you get
what
that
I'm
phone
in white
call,
dust.
or whatever it is, email. Probably a fucking person-to-person meeting where they put your phone in a basket.
Right.
Really? What is it like, and what do you do? And do you go into a deep dive and try to find out what's legit and what's not legit? Do you go and interview the people from the New York Post that wrote the article? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a weird situation where they're kind of asking you to have this level of expertise in a thing that is not your area of expertise.
Right.
Or do you just have some faith in
There
the
you go, that's
system
better.
and go, well,
That's
I mean,
better.
this is
That's
the
way
FBI
better.
telling me this, and if
That's
they're
way
saying it's
better.
Russian misinformation,
Like
then I don't want to put it
1,000
out there
times
if that
better.
could affect the results of an election. And so
Imagine
maybe
if
you
it
err
is.
on that side.
Right, imagine
What?
it is.
Come on,
Imagine you've
baby.
been warned, and then
Come
it
on.
is Russian disinformation, but you also allow people to share it, and it turns out to actually affect the
Like I'm not. It doesn't look like I'm going full
that's
speed. I
swings the
don't know.
election the other way. Trump wins
like I'm
again,
going
and then we
slower.
find out it's a hoax. Then we find out he really is in cahoots with Russia. That was
Like I don't
the
think
big
this is
fear,
54
right?
even.
And that's not a narrative that you didn't hear.
I don't think it's
Like,
even 54.
You heard constantly he was in bed with Russia. You heard constantly.
How's
Russia
meeting?
has
It's going well. It's going all right.
Russia
Going
has
all right.
this,
Thank
Russia
you.
has
Thank
that, did
you.
this. People peed on him. You
Yeah.
know, that was the steel
Yes.
dust, yeah.
Right, and no matter, and there's
Like,
an interesting thing like that
I don't get
because,
it.
and there's polling that shows this. Like I forget exactly what it is, but it's a very
going
large
all right.
percentage of
How about
Democrats,
you?
Democrat voters still believe Donald Trump was in bed with Russia, even though the investigation found no evidence that there was any conspiracy or anything like that, and in fact, anyone paying attention to it. The whole thing was just completely orchestrated to box Donald Trump in.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not a Trump supporter, if anyone needs that disclaimer, but I'm just saying objectively, he was framed for treason, essentially, for being a traitor to his
I was
country.
thinking, oh, thanks.
Working with Russia, involved in a
was
conspiracy
just slow.
to change the election results of 2016.
I don't think I was.
Also, and then
using
there
the
was
stick
no
correctly.
public apology once the investigations were over. There was no exoneration publicly.
No, they just kind of, in the last year of his administration, stopped talking about it as much, never basically acknowledged that we had been saying Trump-Russia collusion for all this time. After the report fell apart, they moved immediately over to the Ukraine Gate thing, which is very interesting given the context of everything going on now. And then they just pulled it up again in the presidential election of 2020 when this laptop came out, and they were like, oh, this is Russia again. Seems like that old thing. And it worked.
The thing is, there is Russian disinformation, right? There's that too.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you know if your Twitter or Facebook, and I'm not exonerating them for what they did, right? They shouldn't have done it. I don't believe in censorship, especially when it comes to censoring a story that's from the second oldest newspaper in the fucking country. It's
That's
kind
cool.
of crazy. Like they're journalists, right? Whatever you might think of the New York Post and their funny headlines, they're essentially journalists.
Yes.
When they print something like this, like you're supposed to, think first about where is it coming from. Think first about like what's the ramifications of censorship. What if it's accurate? I don't think anybody thought that. I think the orange man scared the fuck out of everybody, and they all acted irrationally. And I think that's one of the things that broke mass media, mainstream media, in terms of like television media and news. And it was just this hate for Trump was so overwhelming. It's like you had to say that he was bad, no matter what the story was.
He pissed off a lot of people in an unbelievable way. But he also, he really pissed off people in like the intelligence agencies and people at very high levels for a bunch of different reasons. But like that stuff, it's like the same
just
thing
so-
with Alex
it's just so
Berenson's
dumb.
thing. It's like, okay, but then
I don't
you
do this
censored that
anymore.
story and you turned out to be wrong. And they turned out to be right.
Right.
And they were telling the truth. And so now, while you, in theory, may have been correcting for this one mistake, which was, Russian misinformation could sway an election, what ended up happening was that the intelligence community interfered in the election, and that they did not allow this story, the intelligence agencies and big tech interfered in the 2020 election. They silenced this story, which was a newsworthy story. No matter how much weight you put into it, whether should it change your vote that the son of the president, the then former vice president, is clearly selling his last name for political, his political influence to make money from foreign governments. I don't know how big a deal you should think that is, but that is a story.
Don't
That's
really want to do
something
this
that if someone
anymore.
broke that, that's a story there. And then there were questions about what did Biden know about this? Was he getting kickbacks from that? The Babalinsky, something like that, I think was.
But also
Hunter Biden's
speedrun,
partner.
Perfect
He
Dark.
Testified, or not testified, but he was interviewed
Mainly
by
just
the
Perfect
FBI.
Dark
Just
and
found this out,
GoldenEye.
last month. That he was interviewed by the FBI and told them
Yeah,
this.
this is really
Told them
pissing me
that,
off.
yes, I've met with Joe Biden several
Let me
times.
just try
he
a
knew
fucking
about all these business
couple
dealings. Well, Joe
1.2s,
Biden is claiming,
honestly.
I've never talked to my son about his business. This is at least worthy.
Yeah,
to
mainly
print
just
this
GoldenEye
story.
and
to
Perfect
have
Dark.
Twitter shut down one of the biggest newspapers in the country, and then make it so you couldn't share the link. And then Facebook, as Zuckerberg said,
Yo,
lowered the signal in a significant
Yeah,
way,
really.
I think was the way he put it.
I don't remember what he said, the way he said it, but essentially he
What am I doing here?
admitted that there's some complex shadow banning type mechanism that's in place for information, and fucking the whole thing's so complicated, and I do not.
I just want to do I
at
just want
all.
to try a couple runs
Imagine
like this.
being
I
someone
don't
at
know.
Facebook and the
I
FBI
might
tells
just
you that.
not.
Or
Oh
being
wait,
someone
shit!
at
I
What
gotta.
the fuck are you supposed to do? Tell the FBI to go fuck itself? You know how fucking scary that would be?
Yeah, and even if you look at the way that the Congress talked to him when they hauled him in front of Congress several times, I mean, they like really kind of shake him down.
Yeah.
They're like, "What are you doing about this? What are you
Right.
doing about that? How are you making sure that?" And imagine the task of making sure you create a platform where people can speak to each other, and you now have the task of making sure they're all being honest.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck do you do that?
How the
It's
fuck
an
do you do
insane
that?
thing. And I really do think that obviously there's costs to everything. But the only obviously like human answer here is like, well, look, we believe in the spirit of free speech or we don't. Like
Yeah.
people can say things, and then if you believe in democracy, which everyone claims to, right? They all say the reason they hate Trump is because he denied democracy or he's a threat to democracy. Well, then you have to believe in the ability of voters to like make a determination for themselves of like what's what. And if they can't, then the whole project doesn't work anyway.
But they're like these people. We've been lying to them for so long. And they're so dumb. We can't let them run things.
Right.
We can't let them just vote. Just regular vote.
Well, it's like I see people up here. It's like because all the people who are like selling the war in Ukraine right now and how we have to send more weapons in, and we have to crack down harder on Russia and be more involved in the war. It's like all the same people who sold the war in Iraq. I mean, not all of them, but a whole bunch of them are like the exact same people.
They're just people
like I
who
say,
sell war.
Yeah, and you're like and those same people will complain about misinformation. And they're like the ones who sold the war in Iraq.
Oh,
And then they
man.
go, okay,
That's a pretty
remember
good
how I
round
told
with
you
the
that
boost?
Saddam Hussein was in bed with Osama bin
Sucks.
Laden and he had nukes that he was going to detonate in Kansas? Well, let me tell you what's going on now. You're like, how do you get to tell me what's going on now? How are you even here?
This is precisely what they warned about. Like when Eisenhower gave that speech.
Mm-hmm.
It's precisely what he was warning about.
Well-
We're warning about undue influence and that there's a whole business in war now.
Right.
And they want to go to war.
So Eisenhower basically said that because during World War II, we built up this arms industry that has never been built up before. And now you have these companies, and that's he coined the term, the military-industrial complex. You see this all over the place in Washington, D.C. now. There are like these think tanks that get funded by the weapons manufacturers, and then those think tanks come up with pieces about why we need to go fight a war, and then they go and lobby the politicians to support some other war. It's like, it's something
And
out
you
of like
could
a crazy
see-
movie.
And you can see that same thing in response to disease.
Oh yeah, exactly.
The pharmaceutical companies get involved. The response to disease
It could be
is always their
54.
pharmaceutical
Hopefully it's
products.
54.
It's never lifestyle.
If it's 55, I'm
It's
in
one of the,
big
One
trouble.
of the best videos of Fauci is early on.
Well, I'm in big
Kicked
trouble.
off, Where he's saying,
I don't even know how it's
You
55.
don't need a mask. It's not going to work. Just don't drink. Don't smoke. Try to take care of yourself. That's the most important thing. Like, where'd all that go?
Well, and-
that's not convenient.
Like, I'm not
to
gonna
pharmaceutical companies, and it's also
grind very much time
lumping
in this level.
everybody physically into the same boat, the same category of risk, is so crazy. And that's what's really freaking people out because they're trying to do it to little children. Because they're trying to do that now to little children when there's significant risk of myocarditis. It's a real thing. We know it's a thing. These goddamn commercials that you see where they're talking about little kids and myocarditis on television. Like when was that an issue? You're trying to pretend that this was an issue before? This was not an issue that you needed to advertise on television. The risk of myocarditis in children, and just give them some medicine, and then they're going to grow up and be
Stuff
happy. and
sucks.
healthy. Like, you don't even fucking know that because you don't know. the
Speedruns
extent of
basketball
heart
chat.
damage. You don't know that.
There was another clip of Fauci that was during the lockdown regime before Operation Warp Speed. So before the vaccine regime, when we were still in the lockdown regime. And this video I haven't seen go as viral, but I played it on my podcast. Part of the problem, if you go look, it's in like one of the last 5 episodes. If anyone wants to check it out. But he was saying, point blank, during the COVID lockdowns, that when people were going, well, maybe we could get a vaccine and that'll get us out of these lockdowns. And he was like, no, because even if we got a vaccine, it would take at least 2 years of trials before we would know whether this vaccine was safe. And then sometimes vaccines can have a negative effect where actually you're worse at fighting off the
Oh,
the
dude,
virus
I fucking
afterward.
missed that
And
by,
he
like,
kind of breaks down this whole thing. Then all
tiny
of a
hair.
sudden, once Operation Warp Speed
Should not
starts,
travel to
and then
Russia.
once Biden gets in, you're not allowed to talk about that anymore. And in fact, when I was on with you, it was a couple times ago.
Wow.
was the clip that
That's
we went.
insane.
You got like all this heat for.
That's
and
so
Fauci
dumb.
even responded, and essentially what you were saying was like, hey, if you're a young
the dumbest
person,
thing ever, Dick.
just be really healthy. That's my advice to you. Eat healthy, exercise, get a lot of sunlight, get vitamin D, like all these things. And that became like a controversial statement. There is all of the science backs that up. That is absolutely excellent advice.
But it had nothing to do with science at that point. It was a narrative. This is what's going to get us out of this horrible thing we're in now. Take it. And everybody had to take it. And if you didn't take it, there was all this crazy nonsense. Like, first of all, they knew in the beginning that it wasn't going to stop infection. They knew. That Burke said that. She
No.
said that down. I should have said that before.
Yeah.
She
I did
said
not,
that.
Dick.
I knew that it wasn't going to prevent
She said
infection.
like we oversold it a little or something like that. Yeah,
I don't know
like-
what she said, how she said it, but you know, that was known back then. And it's also, if you talk to virologists about respiratory illnesses, like you can't contain it. You do your best. Like, can you stop yourself from getting it? Yeah, if you completely isolate from humanity and you stay on a ranch and you never leave and you get your own well water and you wait this bitch out, that's possible. You could do that. But other than that, if you're going to be in contact with human beings, and especially something that you can spread before you know you have it, which apparently is the case, like people can have a mild form of it and be spreading it, and then other people can die from it.
Yeah.
And you might not be affected by it at all, but the other people that get it might die. And so that was the big fear, right? And everybody was like, if you are irresponsible at this point, you're contributing to this horrible situation. I get that. But why didn't we put that same sort of focus and same sort of pressure on people to
Over
take care of their
54.
health? Because that
Restrain him,
makes a big
interrogate him for
fucking
several hours?
giant
Wow.
difference, as big as anything.
It's crazy.
Is whether or not you're healthy and you have a robust immune system that can
Well,
fight
this
off
level
any kind
sucks,
of infection.
man.
Not just this one, but all the ones that people get constantly and die from. I mean, there's fucking in the neighborhood of 30 to 50,000 people every year die from the flu, right? Isn't it something crazy like that?
depending
Like a
on the
bad year?
season. Yeah.
What about that? You know, are we just going to do the same lockdown thing for everything now? Like, what are we going to do when diseases come? Is 50,000 okay, but 500,000 is bad? And out of those 500,000,
So you get him
how
a
many
different
of them
lad, I
had?
suppose.
How many of them were old?
Righteous
How many of
guys.
them had 4 comorbidities, which is the average? 4 comorbidities, the people that died from it?
Yeah.
This is wild shit.
Yeah, and this has been true way before COVID in America. It's something like, according to the CDC, there was something, I think it was between like 66 and 70% of medical costs are associated with preventable illness. So whether it's obesity,
That's crazy.
Smoking, drugs, all this like unhealthy lifestyle type stuff, and then. We have like these debates over like Obamacare and all these other things, and none of that ever comes up. Like no one ever brings up the fact that like, well, if we actually want to have a solution to the health problem in this country, well, we kind of know what the solution is. Solution is to like eat good and exercise and things like this, and don't do drugs, and don't, or at least the unhealthy ones. Don't smoke cigarettes. That's kind of the solution. And no one ever seems to be like, well, we're asking the people to do this. I'm certainly not advocating forcing anyone to do anything, but you could at least mention that.
Well,
Okay.
you could find a world in which that would be encouraged, where it could be encouraged in a positive way, and it would really, literally change people's lives. Like they would start doing it and start feeling better, and then that would become a new way of life for them. And then they would look back a year, 2, 3 years from now with so much more energy and so much healthier and feel so much better, and go, God, why didn't someone tell me this earlier?
Yep.
And that's a thing. That's a real thing that we can do. It's just such a fucking fascinating time to watch people's thought processes and how quickly people are to join the herd mentality and to not question things. Especially the people that put all their faith in some of the companies that have been shown to be the most deceptive and profited the most from that deception and have been penalized. Even though they've been penalized financially, if you look at the gain versus loss, it's it's not even a slap on the wrist, because they were still allowed to make billions of dollars from pharmaceutical medications that killed millions of people.
Yeah. And then it's
Or
just
at
like,
least thousands of people.
yeah, and then they're just like they're just doing math.
Right.
They're like, okay, well, we paid this $5 billion fine, but we make $40 billion in profits.
But that's what Abramson said when I had John Abramson on, who's a guy who's litigated against pharmaceutical companies in the Vioxx case. He got the internal memos where they said there's going to be all these complications, but we will do well. Like, they knew the health complications that were going to be associated with this medication that wound up killing at least 50,000 people, which is fucking wild. And they made like 12 billion. They got penalized a few billion, and so they made profit.
Right.
They made profit off of a disease which they pushed through, knowing that they were hiding data.
Yeah.
It's fucking, and then people were willing to trust them. Like,
and then, you know, when you look at like things like when they had these COVID passports in all of these big cities, they're, you know, the thing that's so crazy is like, so then they go, okay, so the government is basically forcing you to consume this pharmaceutical product, or you can't participate in the society that you live in. And then all these people get forced into it. It's clear as day that this did nothing. I mean, they put the vaccine passports into effect in New York City before the Omicron variant. And when Omicron came through, it just wiped through them. Everybody got Omicron in the city. It was like the most contagious variant. It did nothing to stop this. And then ultimately it was like so obvious and the people just weren't having it, so they pulled back on it. But then there's no admission that
Like,
oh,
come
we
on,
got
like,
that wrong.
fuck,
There's
why
no
don't you just fucking
reconciliation,
shoot
no
the camera?
correction.
Why don't you
But
just shoot the
pharmaceutical
camera?
companies, they kept all the money for all the people who were forced to consume their product.
well, not only that, they
dumb.
have zero risk.
Right, completely protected from liability.
Yeah.
Many of them got funding from the government for the development in Operation Warp Speed. So
I hate
it's
this
a pretty
fucking
sweet,
dot. I'm
gig.
using a
Look,
dot for the
whenever
first
there's
time.
a
It sucks.
pandemic, or whenever there's a new thing, there's a crisis, there's always going to be mistakes made. And it's whether or not we learn from those mistakes, and whether or not you have a healthy distrust for narratives that are being pushed by people who have a financial incentive for these
Up
narratives.
and dot. Yeah, man.
There's another
I was
one.
using it for the Aztec 00 guard.
Do you know how many people died because they were on respirators?
But now I'm trying to use it for the
Is it
camera, and it's like,
correlation or
it's
is it
not.
causation? Well, they don't fucking
It's
use
not
them
computing.
much anymore. That's a fact. And 88% of the people in New York, they put on something like that. Find out what percentage of people got put on respirators who wound up dying. And then you could say, well, they were gonna die anyway, and that's why. There's some people that disagree with that, and they say, no, you blew out these people's lungs.
Well, the reason I think that you're right to disagree with that is because what you said.
I think it's moot, man.
So at the beginning, right?
I swear, man, it's moot. It doesn't do much.
Governor there was demanding that Trump send in 50,000 more respirators because we needed them or people are going to die.
Wow,
And
okay.
then the doctors basically
Which
all
does
from
a
the
lot.
bottom up
Does
turned, like,
everything.
we're not going to be putting these people on respirators anymore because so many of them are dying.
Most New York COVID patients on ventilators died. Yeah. Rose to 88% of those who received mechanical ventilation. Among the 2,634 patients whose outcomes were known, the overall death rate was 21%,
Like, just this.
but it rose to 88% for the ones.
Yo, what's Olaf? What's up, Olaf?
Christ.
Lopez,
So even
welcome,
just
welcome,
that.
welcome.
So
It's
let's
probably
just
PB.
pretend
It's a pretty terrible
only-
run.
what is
Absolutely
that,
terrible run.
67%? Imagine that. Just that. 67% of what, that's a lot of fucking people.
Did I
dying.
not do the thing?
And this one, to your
What?
point, though, I would say I don't think there was anything
was
like malicious
retarded.
about this. I do think doctors were trying to save people,
Yes.
and then they quickly started realizing our patients are doing really bad when we put them on these
Right.
ventilators, and then they backed off, and they were like, let's not do this anymore. So to your point, yeah, like mistakes will be made, and I think that one was like an honest mistake. But the point
What's
is
up,
that
Olaf
at least
Lopez?
the doctors
Welcome.
then corrected that,
Right.
and then went, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to wait until we absolutely need to put them on these ventilators. But there seems to be with all of these other like major policies from the federal government and from a lot of these state governments that there's just kind of, you know, there's like no admission, no recognition, and yeah, I mean, I remember like when Texas here, when you guys first opened back up and just ended all of the COVID restrictions. All the blue state
Look at
governors
this game.
were saying this is
Game of my
so
child?
reckless
Yo.
and insane, and people are going to
Nice.
die. And then the death rate
Me
was
too.
no worse than
Me
in any of these
too.
other blue states, and now they all stopped.
Yeah,
and they don't
everybody
even
wants to
acknowledge
point-
it.
Everybody wants to point to Florida. Like Florida, what they did, they had the highest rate of death in COVID. Yeah, but they have the oldest people. And if you age adjust, it's no different than California.
Yeah, that's right.
If you age adjust.
Oh,
that
I
was the
totally
right
know
way
what you
to do
mean.
it. He was right. Like, it's not, no one's saying that COVID's good. It was not good. But these people
Yeah, welcome.
that did things that were not good for society, were not good for small businesses, were not good for people's mental health, were not good for the development of children's language skills. Like, all these things were wrong.
Well, look, I mean, there's so much stuff that
Please.
it's going to be like a generation before we even
So
see
dumb.
the damage from the lockdowns, and we won't even be able to know for sure what exactly
So
traced
dumb.
back to what exactly was the damage.
game is
from
way
the
better than
lockdowns.
Call of Duty.
But just
I
think
don't
about
know,
what a
it's
nightmare,
nice.
You know, 2020, I mean, there were riots in that year that were obviously about the George Floyd thing, but were very related to the lockdowns as well.
Warp.
It wasn't a
That's
coincidence that after 3 months of being locked in your
That was
home
terrible,
with
PV.
no bar, no sports,
We can do way better
no
than
friend's
that.
house,
Lost your job.
no work, you know, that you...
Yo,
all of a
what-
sudden
what's up,
people
Aaron?
riot, because cops have done
Yeah,
you know,
man.
fucked up shit a lot of times before, and this one
I don't
led
think
to
we can.
national, you know, riots. That was all part of the cost of lockdowns. So the
Call of
economy,
Duty, yo.
the inflation that we're dealing with
Yo,
right now
well
was
said,
a
Baron.
huge part of the lockdowns, and it was partly because they printed trillions of dollars as a result of being like, well, what are we going to do to make sure we're not in a depression if we just stop the economy right now? So, of course, the answer is always, well, we'll print trillions of dollars, hand out most of that to big corporations, and give some crumbs to the American people.
And it's just shows my
and
wow.
So now, you think of the cost of inflation. I mean, people are getting destroyed.
Yeah, I hope it's good, my man.
From the value of the dollar.
Apparently they're
going
supposed
down
to.
Right now, the cost of everything rising. This is
I hope it's good.
These things are all interrelated, you know, and it's like
Hacking
it's
up
very hard to
storm.
measure the cost of shutting down society.
No, and that should have been taken into consideration. The fact that it wasn't so crazy, but everybody wanted to be safe.
Indian
And the
dude.
government, you know, said we have to
Wow.
at least have
Crazy.
It has to have an illusion that we're doing something to protect people.
Yeah. But really, I mean, in hindsight at this point, looking back at it, that if the government had just said, look, there's this
Irony
there's this
lost
virus,
me,
this
yeah,
nasty
really.
upper respiratory virus that's coming over here, and we think that if you are
That was the worst quick pause of all time.
because this is like by March, it was very clear in the data of who was dying from this. It was very clear that it was old and sick people. This
Oh
was
my
way
God.
less.
They
Insane.
focused a lot on outliers.
Not-
They
not very
focused on
insane,
young
actually.
people, and
Yes,
a lot
yes.
of those young people, unfortunately, were ventilated.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
You know, Michael Yo's doctor told him, "I'm not going to get you on a ventilator because if I do, you'll die." And he got it. He got it.
Fuck you, man.
So it was early on. His doctor was wise enough, fortunately, to
lucky,
say,
yeah. Yeah, no, but I'm just saying if you were being honest and not focusing on the outliers and actually looking at like what we can learn from this data, they could have just said, look,
The back
if you
boost,
are
that went
at
too
risk,
far.
We really recommend
this stupid
you isolate
hallway.
yourself.
It's PV
Everybody
though.
else, try to be smart, try to be as healthy as you can, like be, you know what I
37,
mean?
I've
And
never
then
seen
if
this
you feel
video.
sick at all,
We can do better,
don't
though.
come into work. Like do not power through it. Do not assume it's allergies or a cold or something like that. Like
tested.
make sure, get tested. And the tests weren't as readily available back then, but just stay home, wait it out, you know what I mean, whatever. Just doing that and not locking down the economy and not having all of these crazy restrictions would have unquestionably been a much, much better way to handle COVID.
The quick
Because
pausing is
look, from
different.
all these states, if you look at the lockdown states versus the non-lockdown states, or the lockdown countries versus the non-lockdown countries, if you look at the mask mandate counties versus the non-mask mandate counties, you can't draw any conclusions from any of them. The truth is that this virus just moved the way it was going to move. And so all you were doing was just destroying people's lives. You were just adding more
Nice,
of a
Baron.
cost
Thanks, buddy.
than the virus itself was going to add, which was already significant.
Wait,
And
man,
here's
hope you're
another
good.
thing they never did. When they got data, and the data was pretty clear, that a large percentage of the people in the ICU for COVID were deficient in vitamin D. And this is not saying that vitamin D is going to prevent you from getting COVID, but it 100% will increase the power of your immune system. Vitamin D deficiency
Oh, this is a good run.
problem with people's overall
What?
metabolic health.
Damn
And
it,
there's a large
stupid
percentage of
fucking-
our country, because
I
we
suck,
stay indoors
but that was a
all the
good
time, we
start.
do things,
That's
we're
the
not
cycle you
active
want.
outside. That it's vitamin D is a hormone, and your body produces it from the sun. That's the best way to get it. But if you're not getting it that way, you can supplement.
That's what I'm gonna have to do.
And
Just
it's a definite
grind out
best
a
second
run like
choice.
that.
And it
It's
really
okay.
helps. And it makes a big fucking difference. It makes a big difference in everything. Muscle development, brain function.
Oh.
Like, it's a real fucking problem with human beings. They had that data. There was no like public declaration of this.
Oh yeah,
It
this was known way before COVID. Yeah.
Such a simple thing to tell people. Vitamin D is so important. Go outside, lay in the sun. Go to a fucking park. Parks should build that when they shut parks down, that was fucking nice.
Playgrounds down, basketball courts down,
The
everything.
ocean.
Yeah.
Remember the fucking guy wakeboarding?
Yeah.
It's like, these people are out of their fucking minds. And if they just did that, then I would know at least you are taking measures based on data to try to help people and protect people.
And just the insane thing is that they all accuse people like us who talk about it like this of like spreading misinformation throughout
Yeah.
the whole time. Meanwhile, the people who say that like, you know, right, like you should stay inside are not accused, they don't get accused of spreading misinformation. The people like the President of the United States and Dr. Fauci, the head of the pandemic response, who say, if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID and you won't spread it.
Yeah.
Point blank.
Point blank.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
That's how they sold this to the American people.
Yeah.
And that's not going to get you kicked off Twitter
No, it's
or whatever.
It's wild, man. Or the people that spread that story about folks that were they were having overdoses of ivermectin, and so they were being rushed to the hospitals. They had no room for gunshot patients because so many people were taking ivermectin. A total 100% fabrication and lie that was in Rolling Stone, that Rachel Maddow tweeted, and then she doubled down on it afterwards, after it was proven. We looked at the photo, and we were like, why are those people wearing coats? It's August in Oklahoma.
Well, it also if you just had anyone who knew anything, I'm not a doctor or anything, but if you know anyone
God, this
who knows
level's really
anything
fucking
about it,
annoying.
you would just look at that, like I did the second I read that story, go, that doesn't sound right.
Game Pass play on the
Ivermectin's known for
Exponer?
being
Wow,
very
are you
safe drug.
serious?
No, whether the argument is that it helps with COVID or not, it's the reason why at the beginning doctors were giving
I'm
it
not
to
gonna
people.
be
is
playing
because
it
they were
then.
kinda like, well, this may help or it may not, but it's definitely not a dangerous drug to take.
It's on the World
So,
Health Organization's list of most important medicines.
yeah, like so.
Unfortunately.
It just made no sense. You'd at least
will
go
not
in
get a
being
sub to play
skeptical of
that.
this.
I
By the
will
way,
not
didn't
get
it
a
just
sub.
get added?
Yes.
It just got added as a
Oh, I
COVID
understand.
treatment, I believe.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know what find out what that is, because what I've heard is it's just, they just put it on there just to give people information about it. I mean, whether or not they're admitting that it's
But why do they even
defecation.
call it ivermectin? Why don't they call it horse paste? Like, why would they even refer to it like that?
It's their own rare replay.
That might have worked on some people at the moment.
Oh, I
People were
understand.
like, oh my God, these idiots are taking horse paste. But now, given the
Kind of.
amount of time that's gone on, what it's done, really, is it's eroded significantly people's respect and people's trust.
Yay,
in
that's
mainstream
better.
news.
Which I think is good.
This is fucking very good. Because
You know-
we got to find out what CNN really is.
Yeah, well,
it's
that's-
a propaganda arm of the Democratic Party.
But if you think about it, like this is the consequence of all of this stuff, and this one
Yes,
with COVID
yes.
is the biggest one by
Dude,
far.
sub 30
But
would be
even
great.
when
If we can
people
get sub
I
30
remember, like,
tonight,
when-
that'd be
when
great.
Donald Trump was running for president in 2016, and the people in the corporate press, who I know some of them,
Thanks, Dave.
they'd be saying these things like, they'd be like, he's just calling us
Thanks,
fake
Baron,
news and
and
liars and all of this. And like, how is this resonating with so many
everyone.
people? And they were like completely like, and you're like, guys, I don't know. I mean, you sold a war
Wow.
where 1 million people died.
That's
off
crazy, Dick.
This guy had weapons of mass destruction, and he didn't. Like, real people's kids went and fought in that war and then came back and blew their brains out. This happened. Tens of thousands of American soldiers blew their brains out. You know, like, a lot of people knew that guy. Well, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And they know that you sold this war. Do you think that in the next 10 years after that, the fact that people have no trust in you, there might be a connection there? You know, do you think the fact that even like Barack Obama, saying, whatever, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, just all these lies.
Yeah.
Like, people remember this stuff.
7 years
but
old,
man,
no,
if they
no.
think that the people in 2016 didn't trust the corporate press, after this, the amount of people who will never look at CNN again, will never look at the New York Times again, as if there's any pretense of even you're pretending to tell the truth. It's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Or at least it's for huge numbers of people. They'll never trust you again. You can never talk to them again.
Well, I think what CNN's trying to do now is rebuild, and they're trying to become a source of objective news. And I think this new guy recognizes the mistakes of you're allowing editorials by some of the dumbest fucking people on television, and people that are only there because they were hired. One of the beautiful things about whether it's Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar, who was my
Too
favorite
slow
show.
there. I gotta be
One of
faster.
the best points about it is there's no one running that but them.
Holy what? Yo, thank you,
Objective
Dick.
information from
What?
people that you
Are you
trust.
serious,
They're
man?
gathering up everything they can
Thank
find,
you, man.
and they can give
Yo,
an
shout out
assessment
Dick
based on
Hiscan.
their
He's working for
understanding of
affiliate now.
positions, and they
Give him a
debate it, they
follow.
talk about it, and they go over
Lurking
that.
his streams. Are you serious, Dick? Yo, thanks,
People
man.
chose them. People
Yo,
knew
I
they
was
could
watching
trust them,
the
so they
Damn
followed them.
53.
That's not the case with people on television. They just get
Is
hired.
Damn
And
52
it's-
possible?
Right, it's a thing you can read that
Video
it's
with
kinda like
Goose from
however you feel
2017,
about,
February
Crystal
2017,
Sager,
and I saw Dick
they're
Hiscan,
not
a
lying.
mod,
You
Right.
can kinda tell that
talking
they're telling you what they
in that
think.
video.
Not
It-
to- not
it's
to say
chat
they're
on
right about
screen.
everything, but they're also
like, wow, Dick's a legend.
There's no pretense of them being
You were a big part of that
objective
video
journalists
because you
both
asked like
are
all the
opinion
important
journalists.
questions.
Like, they're both like, okay, like she's kind of like a left-wing populist, he's kind of a right-wing populist.
He like did the
right?
math. He
So they're
found
but
that
that's
like
our opinion. We'll let you know that up front.
you can get a
Rather than
0.33
pretend
boost,
I take no
0.33
opinion here. I'm just an
boost, and
objective
or
journalist.
0.30 boost,
and,
0.30
you know,
boost, and then a
we're Brian
0.35
Stelter.
boost, and Dick's like,
everybody
yeah,
knows
but
that we're real news and they're fake
there's
news.
still
That's the objective
0.2,
truth.
0.02 remaining or some
Nah,
shit.
it doesn't work. No one trusts you. You don't
Fucking
even be a
hilarious.
person. Like the way you talk is like a
bizarre.
lizard pretending to be a person. It's like very strange, right?
Yeah.
Yo, thanks, Dick.
What
You
gives
kidding me,
hope
man?
about
Thanks,
those two,
homie.
Crystal and Sagar, is that they are a right-wing populist and a left-wing
Thanks,
populist,
man.
and yet they're very good friends, and they get along
Really,
great, and they have
16
respectful
months.
conversations about things.
And you
Wow.
actually realize that they
Legend.
have a lot of overlap, which is a big thing that I think that the kind of powerful like the establishment work very hard to make sure that you don't ever think about that.
Right, don't
How
think about
much actually that your average left of center person, right of center person has in common. And that this
Wow.
is why they love pumping these culture war issues so much, because they're the things that get the two sides fighting with each other while they're off at the top not caring.
Right.
Like, you know, like what J.P. Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs or the Federal Reserve, what they love is when left-wing America and right-wing America are at each other's throats and they're
Yo,
just
thank you so
raking
much
in
for that sub,
billions of
man.
dollars in profits. Because no one's looking at
It's
that.
really
But if you
model
really
there.
think about the things that most people care about,
I mean,
like most regular
what am I
Americans
doing?
care about the most is the
Terrible.
you know, my health
I-
care is like really unaffordable. Or the,
I don't know.
You know, groceries.
I
just
like
went
the
through
first
roof.
one just because it's
My
the
rent just,
original, I
went
guess.
up by 25%.
I don't know.
So it's like you go, well, you know, like does inflation fuck over left wingers or right wingers? Fucks over both of them. Like it's like all of these things. It's not a left versus right issue. It's like a top versus down issue. You know who it really helped? It helped all of the people that got the big corporations who got all that bailout money when the Federal Reserve printed $6 trillion in 2020. It was really good for them. It's really bad for you. It's the old George Carlin thing, right? It's a big fucking club and you ain't in it.
Yep.
And that's a left winger or a right winger.
Yep.
You're not in this club.
Nope.
It's that club versus you.
Terrible.
That's the narrative.
Really
And they have a
bad.
lot more in common with each other. Let me tell you, the
Change her to give her
Republican
more
politicians
sex
and
appeal.
Democrat politicians have a lot more in common with each other than they have with you. And left winger and right winger American, you have a lot more in common with each other than you do with
Interesting.
Biden or Romney. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and those culture war issues, that's the most important thing you're saying. And this is something that people need to get in their head. That these culture war issues that we're seeing in the news every day,
This
there
fucking
is
level,
an
man.
element of distraction.
This level's so
No
troll.
matter how much you think these issues are important, they are important. They certainly are. They are.
Yeah, there's lots of them that are very
They're,
important.
they're
yeah.
very important. But they're not talking about them because they're important.
Right.
They're talking about them because they know this will solidify people's adherence to the ideology, whether it's the right-wing ideology or the left-wing.
Yeah, the
When you have people like Stacey Abrams saying that
Perfect
a
Dark is
fetal
very-
heartbeat is an illusion.
What's the
Like, how
word?
did she say it?
woke.
Yeah, it's not real.
She
What you're
said-
hearing there isn't real or something
did
like
she-
that.
Not in a
did
bad
she
way. They did a
say
pretty good job of it,
about
except for
This is
Elvis.
like-
She said at
Elvis,
6
Elvis
weeks,
almost ruined the game for me.
Established biology.
I heard
Elvis
my
honestly
daughter
almost
when
ruined the
she was
game for
a
me.
6-week-old. I mean, you know,
It's
like
established
Elvis was like Jar Jar
biology.
Binks.
This is wild,
terrible.
ideological.
And because of the woke
crazy
thing, it's like,
cult
oh, you're
talk.
supposed
Well,
to
what was making that
appreciate
woke
these
sound
weird
that
speaking,
me and my
shitty
wife listened
fucking
to?
alien
What did
things
she
just
say?
because
She said is
you have
a-
to accept
no such
everybody.
thing as a
Even these
prenatal
shitty fucking,
heartbeat
like,
at 6 weeks. The sound is
shitty
manufactured.
sounding,
Just that
lame
statement
alien
alone should
slow-ass
discredit you to
fuckers.
the point where people should never listen to
because we
anything
were
you
all
ever say.
inclusive,
what
and
did she even-
then we just end up
who's
suffering because we don't
manufacturing?
fucking
my
kill
wife's,
the
like,
the
OB was
fucking
just in the corner.
aliens.
That's your baby.
Yeah, like,
Because
what,
some
he's
woke
faking it? Like, what does that mean?
psychological
She supports no
false
limits on
existence
abortion.
for accepting everything, and then you get people like Jar Jar Binks.
Because you're saying like 8 months and 4
Elvis.
weeks, or 8 months and 3
Ruining
weeks,
everything.
rather, like right
I mean,
before the kids coming out.
Well,
That's
this
okay?
is well, this is it's like this is the logical conclusion of this kind of like, well, my body, my choice,
Jesus.
and no restrictions. And you go, so let's say that there's a woman who, whatever, right, 9 months, because not everyone goes
Right.
on their
Right.
due date. 9 months. walks
So
in and
what
goes,
I'm saying
I just
is,
don't feel like it anymore.
I think the original
Can I
people
have an abortion
didn't
now?
think too much
Like,
about
almost
sex,
everyone would go,
but
no, I'm
I
sorry.
mean, maybe
at
they
this
did.
point,
But
no.
I mean, if you look at fucking
But anyway, with all did you ever see, to the point of the culture
Xenia
wars as a
on a top.
distraction, you ever see like you know those like Nexus charts where you can chart like words that are used in mainstream like big newspapers and stuff. So you can chart like a word in the New York Times and how many times it's used.
Right.
And if you
My friends, I don't know if I'm gonna get lower than
if you take
34
any of these, like,
tonight.
woke, you take the term racism and you put it in a nexus chart, and they'll show you throughout the years how many times the term racism is used in the New York Times. And it's like this, and then around like 2011, 2012, goes way up. And
Ian,
social justice,
dang.
way up. Toxic
Shit.
masculinity, way up. Like, and this isn't coming from like the
Dude,
young kids. This
in
is
dry
coming from
season, it was
20-year-olds.
insane.
This
It
isn't coming
rained.
from
It
college
didn't, like,
universities. These are
it
the
rained
biggest
once every like
corporate,
3 weeks.
media
It was insane.
platforms in the country.
It like
All
never
at this
rained
time,
when I was
like,
down there.
flooded the
Only
market
November.
with this woke shit. Now I'm not saying
Only
it didn't
November it would
exist
rain
in
for
college
like 4,
universities.
5,
I'm
6,
not saying
7
that
days
that wasn't
straight
already
once.
going on. I'm just saying
That's
that
when I
what
studied and got
changed
my like
around
study
that
for my
time,
license
it
and
was right
shit.
toward Obama's
But
second
then
term.
it, like, never
What
rained at all.
changed
It was
that
amazing.
all of a sudden the woke shit went from being shit that was taught, like critical race theory, and this stuff was
10
taught
feet of
in
water, oh
college
no,
universities,
that's terrible,
but all of a
man.
sudden it had the backing of all of the biggest, most powerful corporations in the world, and all of the political class, and all of it just got pumped in. And
changed the
the
title.
theory kind of is that what had happened right then in 2010 was you had these huge, this big left-wing populist movement and this big right-wing populist movement. You had the Occupy movement and the Tea Party movement. And they were kind of started over the same thing, which were the banker bailouts. Like the first Tea Party things were started over the Ron Paul campaigns and the TARP. That was like when the first Tea Parties
Wow.
broke out. And the Occupy thing was in direct
Insane,
response
man.
to the banker bailouts and all of this stuff. And you had these big movements. And the lefties back then were standing outside of the big banks screaming, "We are the 99%.
Jesus
And when they
Christ.
were saying 99%, they didn't even mean 99%.
Oh my
they meant
God.
99.9%. They were like, we're the people who don't own banks.
That's
The people who own
terrible.
banks
This
were
is
the people who
live
don't
right
own
now?
banks.
No.
That's who we represent. That was like the leftist populist movement.
Jesus.
And then all of these huge publications. I'm not
Nightmare.
talking about mom and pop newspapers. I'm saying the New York Times and the Washington Post. You know what I mean? All they wanted to talk about all day was what divides all of them. It was like, no, you're not the 99%. You're the whites versus the blacks, the gays versus the straights, the trans versus the cis. And it does, and now you look at it and you see like the gay pride parade floats and there's like a Bank of America float. And it just seems to me like these big banks essentially bought off the left
Crazy.
with all this woke shit, completely distracted them from where their eyes were on the prize, and then turned the left and right against each other, where now they're all fighting. So, like, to your point, it's not that what they're fighting about doesn't necessarily mean anything. Some of them are very important issues, but none of them affect the bottom line for the most powerful people in our society. And what are the bankers doing now since those banker bailouts? They got a whole new round of bailouts in 2020. They're raking in profits still. Nothing was ever addressed about that whole corrupt system.
So do you think that there was a concerted effort to do this? Like, was there a conversation? Like, how do you think something like that happens? If you think that there's this ramp up, and it's been proven by these studies that if you look at the world, like, is it a function of people
Wow, I don't know how that
graduating from
worked
universities,
at all.
taking these jobs in these companies and deciding to push this agenda because they think that social justice is important, because they
This is
do
terrible
see,
run.
you know, these opponents of Obama as being these racist people that are like this like underbelly of society we weren't totally aware of. It needs to be addressed. Or do you think that there is really like a concerted effort from corporations to get people to divide? And if that's the case, how was it discussed?
Well, I can't. Look, the thing is, essentially, the answer is I don't know, because I don't have factually, I don't know for sure. But there's I think it was either, I can't remember if it was Michael Tracy or if it was Matt Taibbi.
Living in a
One of them
simulation,
said it.
yeah,
He goes,
really.
I'm not saying wokeism is a CIA operation, but if it was, everything makes perfect sense. So I'm like, I don't know.
God, I'm so
again,
bad.
there's
I
studies,
suck.
they're not even like studies.
I really
They're just
suck,
mapping
guys.
the word
Right.
and how many times it's used. But there is
Drunk
no
side of the
question
country.
that amongst the most powerful, forces in media,
Question,
there
though,
was a
are
concerted
they
effort
wrong?
to do this. And my guess is that it's much less likely that that came from the 20-year-old interns.
Where did we
than that came
splinter
from some
into
power source up
a
at the
meme-verse?
top. And I think
Yeah.
there was an
Really,
effort
dude?
to do this.
Clown World, my
I
man.
think it came from the very top, and and this has been going on, by the way, for a long time. Like back in the day, there was this is what they did to the right wing in this country. This is what
Fucking
National
like that.
Review
I didn't
did.
need that
They turned
boost.
the right wing into culture warriors when they never were before. Like the old right, the old like Robert Taft, who was known as Mr. Republican. His whole thing was like non-interventionist foreign policy, sound money, like some protectionism, so you protect like American jobs and stuff like that. It was all like this old school right-wing thing, and then National Review and all this like new right rose up in like the 60s, and they were like, no, listen, what really matters is like there's homos out there, all right? Like that's really what us right-wingers care about. What we really care about is abortion. What we really care about is, again, not saying abortion's not an important issue. I'm just saying, but they used that, and then they were like, oh, and by the way, that non-interventionist foreign policy thing, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. We're called warriors now, and we're going to fight communism all throughout the world. Get on board. And so
It's just so
like
wonderful.
This is a tried and true tactic to like break up these movements that can actually threaten where like the real gravy train is. Right. And where is that? That's like in the military-industrial complex, in the banking complex, the pharmaceutical-industrial complex. That's where the real American fascism lies. Not in some people who trespassed on government property in January 6th.
Really
who
suck.
had nothing, was completely powerless, and then is now sitting in solitary confinement for how many hundreds of days. That's not like the face of fascism in America. If you want to talk about fascism in America, look at like the Patriot Act. Look at vaccine passports. Look at like, Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. That's where the fascism lies.
Well, the January 6th thing is not a small thing. Like when people entered the Capitol with zip ties, that's not a small thing. And I don't think dismissing how fucked up that was is I understand what you're saying.
I'm not even saying that it wasn't fucked up or the guy who had zip ties. And I don't know exactly what the story was with that guy with the zip ties. I'm not downplaying it.
There was people in there that were 100% unhinged.
I think there were some people in there that had they gotten their hands on Mike Pence or something like that, like something very ugly could have happened. So I don't mean to downplay that aspect of it. I'm just saying that like those people, even had they done something to Mike Pence or something like that,
it's so
would have
dumb,
been
guys.
shut down by, the military would have come in, the National Guard would have come in. They were never a real threat to take over the United States of America and implement fascism. My point is that these people that I'm talking about are really powerful and actually affecting the lives of everyday Americans. And my other thing is that a lot of those people in January 6th weren't that guy. Right. And we're just people kind of in the crowd who entered the building. Inside. And also, what the hell was going on with Mike Epps, and how does it make any sense that he is
Ray Epps.
Ray Epps, I'm sorry. Not Mike Epps.
Mike Epps is a comedian.
That's a great comedian. Mike, by the way, for the record, Mike Epps was not in January 6th. I'd like to correct the record and apologize to Mike Epps. So sorry. Ray Epps, who Democrats are now defending as like some guy who's being vilified.
Who's defending?
Well, there was some Democrat in Congress the other day who was like, just leave the guy alone. I mean, he wasn't a Fed. Well, look.
You should be concerned if he's not a Fed, then he's on the other team. So why would you be defending him if he's literally inciting violence?
You would be calling him an insurrectionist or a domestic terrorist.
He's telling people to go inside.
How is that? How are all these other people arrested and sitting in jail?
Oh my god, come on, let's go. This is it. This is the run.
Quite an interesting.
It's all up to this last fucking camera.
I don't really know much about him. I know that day, and I know that point blank, it was Ray, the head of the FBI, and one other woman who was like, I think, one of the top people in the Justice Department were straight up asked in congressional testimony.
Like, stop it! Stop it!
FBI
what?
agents or
it's so dumb.
Working with the FBI involved.
It's so fucking dumb. It's so fucking dumb.
They would not answer the question. So I'm just.
Yeah.
I'm more conspiratorial than I ever am on this show.
I'm yelling, stop it. 43. It was slower. It was
conspiracy with that.
It's so dumb.
There are real conspiracies.
I might do like just facility agent or something. This is really dumb.
Amazing job they did of making the term.
That was so slow.
Sound like you're a kook.
Yeah,
Like,
even though
it has to be like Sandy Hook. It has to be something like completely preposterous. It has to be Pizzagate. It has to be, you know, lizard people.
yeah, even though the official story of like all of these events are conspiracies. Like the official story of 9/11 is a conspiracy. So the official story is it's a conspiracy with Osama bin Laden and a bunch of you know, pissed off Muslims in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
Like
they
that's
conspired to take down the United
right.
States,
Like
yeah.
if that's a conspiracy. The
Right.
war in Iraq was a conspiracy.
Right.
Like no matter how you look at it, all these things are people conspiring.
Yeah, conspiracy theory being a negative term is a really genius thing.
Yeah.
What they've done is really amazing. And I think they started that during the Kennedy assassination. I think that's when the whole conspiracy theorist term, because they're like,
Yeah, like you're not allowed to ask questions about
Yeah.
this thing.
especially that thing. That's one of the nuttiest ones. And to this day, I still hear people saying Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. If you're out of your fucking mind, or misinformed, or underinformed, or purposely ignorant because you want it to be Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. The more you read about, you ever talk to Oliver Stone?
No, I've never talked to him, but I've watched a lot of his
Jesus Christ. Oliver Stone will take you down a fucking rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And he has it all off the top of his head. He can just rattle off data and information. He's been following this since, like, he made that film in the 90s. That JFK film was in the 90s. And no, he just released a documentary series recently on Showtime that goes over it in depth.
I haven't seen that. His like American history docuseries thing was really excellent, man. Like
He's
I highly
incredible.
recommend people watch that.
Oliver's incredible. I mean, it's incredible that that guy was this, and still is, this genius filmmaker who also is incredibly well informed about certain things. And he's a patriot. I mean, the guy served in Vietnam. And he understands like the pitfalls of all this shit and where let's go. You can't just let it slide.
Yeah. Also, really worthwhile is watching his interviews with Putin. That series of interviews that he did, particularly considering what's going on right now, which is like to me the most important thing in the world. And this is like the next thing where now, you know like how kind of now me and you could talk about, like you could talk
Oh my
about,
God, let's go.
I put things on YouTube about like the vaccine, you know, and negative effects.
Like,
of the
please, just shoot
I'm
the
just, like,
stupid
not worried
camera,
about it.
please.
It's just like not like it's not that
Like,
hot
please.
right now. But last year,
Yeah.
you were doing that. You were like, man, this might get me flagged. This might get me like kicked off.
conversation
This
that you and I had.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got so much
So
like
much
heat for
from
that.
me
It
saying
was
young people, I would tell them don't get vaccinated.
yeah, like and that just that comment, and then going on to say,
Please,
I would tell them to
yeah.
be really healthy and all of
See
this.
me
That
begging,
comment,
my
it was, like,
PB is like me
trending for
begging.
a week afterward. The White House is commenting on it, Fauci. But now this conversation we just had, doubling down on it and defending it, this isn't going to trend. Because it's just, we're not in that right now. But then you see with the Russia thing, when that first starts, then all of a sudden, if that's what's hot now. And this is how they always do this. Like in the moment, they try to really make it.
Oh,
try to
shit.
Make you
I think I figured it out.
To say the important thing in the moment. But man, dude, this thing with Russia is just like the craziest thing in the world.
It's
Like,
not very
the
good.
idea that we're
Might be
actually
PB base.
flirting
Star was
with
really
a
good.
Nuclear conflict with Russia is the most important priority in the history of humanity. Is that America and Russia do not go to war. There's nothing more important than that. That's it. We'll destroy the human species.
just so
if we do
fucking
this.
dumb.
And yet there's this war.
Yo,
right
thanks,
across the
man.
border,
Thanks,
and there's
homie.
no effort to negotiate.
Yeah, buddy,
going
I'm
on.
so blessed. I'm so
There's
lucky.
like no effort. In fact, from very solid reporting, that actually America, through Boris
so lucky.
Johnson, in it, told Ukraine not to negotiate with Russia at the very beginning of the war, when they had a deal worked out. They had a deal worked out. It's been reported in multiple sources that they had a deal
I can't
worked
believe I
out,
didn't
and the deal
fucking
was
hit the
basically
camera there.
that Vladimir Putin would pull back. He would pull back his troops and leave Ukraine under the condition that the very simple conditions that Ukraine guaranteed autonomy for the Donbass region and agreed to never join NATO. And like that was a deal. Like, okay, I'm not saying everyone thinks that's the perfect deal, but it's better than what we got right now.
better than nuclear war.
And right now, just the other day, dude, the official narrative on this whole war, it's just like it makes no sense. And again, like I said, remember, the same people who are pushing this are the ones who are telling you Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and stuff. But the official narrative, Joe, is basically that, okay, so Vladimir Putin is a madman, a crazy war criminal who's hell-bent on reforming the Soviet Union, and this is a real threat that he could do this. But also he's getting humiliated in this war in Ukraine. So, like,
I fucking hate getting shot by that guard. I hate it so much.
And he's just getting humiliated and beat back. But he's still a real threat to take over all of Europe. And he's a complete madman, by the way, Joe. But when he says he's going to use nuclear weapons, don't listen to that. He'd never actually do that, even though he's a complete madman. And as everyone says, this war, the word they use over and over and over again, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, all of them, unprovoked. Vladimir Putin led an unprovoked war in Ukraine. But then, just like with Osama bin Laden, what they did with him then, don't listen to him. Whatever you do, don't listen to what he's actually saying, because none of that's his motivations. Like, what his motivations are what we tell you. Osama bin Laden hates us because we're free. And then, like, Ron Paul would just go like, yeah, but that's not what he's saying at all. Like, Osama bin Laden was so clear about why he hated America. And he's like, look, I hate you because you murder innocent civilians in the Muslim world, you prop up brutal dictators in the Muslim world, you prop up Israel, who mistreats the Palestinian people, and you have your bases in our Holy Land in the Arabian Peninsula. And then they're like, nah, he hates us because we're free. He didn't mention anything about freedom there. And then, if you say that, they're like, well, are you defending Osama bin Laden? And you're like, no, I'm just saying listen to your enemies. There's a reason why he hates us. And if you listen to Vladimir Putin and what he's saying, I mean, look, he's wrong for invading Ukraine. And, I mean, you know me, Joe. I'm the most anti-war fucking person there is. And there's no excuse for that. Like, tens of thousands of people have died. It's horrible. And a lot of them are soldiers, but a lot of them are civilians. And,
we got the weed. We got the weed.
It's like insane. It's just only people who know nothing about the history of this conflict would say there was no provocation.
Did you see the conversation that Roger Waters had with that CNN guy?
Yeah, and right, because Roger Waters was awesome on that. Because he knows what he's talking about, dude. And he's right about all of that shit. Look, the promise, and this is what he was saying, he's absolutely right, is that the promise when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and this was like verbally promised and put in writing, was that NATO would not expand 1 inch to the east. And NATO at that point, the line then was through Germany, right? Like the western half of Germany was in the west, and the eastern half was with the Soviet Union. And they were like, we'll let all of these nations secede,
for
and
sure.
The Soviet Union will collapse, and we're giving up on communism.
Base Roger Waters.
One of the greatest things that ever happened. And the deal was, okay, you do that, then we won't move NATO. We won't move our military alliance into your area that used to be your realm of influence.
I wish he was based enough to get back with Doug Gilmour, though.
Has moved NATO east to the point that NATO is now on Russia's border. And in Ukraine, even though they didn't officially join NATO, there was always talk of it. Kamala Harris, right before the start of the war, said we're looking to put Ukraine into NATO. And they put under George W. Bush, they put in Poland these dual-use rocket launchers. Is a big complaint that Vladimir Putin has. That he's like, these can be used to get nukes here in a matter of minutes. Like, this is like a threat to us that we.
It's a really fun level, dudes.
And then in 2014,
I really like this level.
There was a coup in Ukraine that was completely led by the West. And I don't know if you've ever heard, but like
look at this. Look at this. Look at this camera. Look at it.
The tape of Gideon Rose, who was the editor for Foreign Affairs magazine on the old Stephen Colbert Report show. That was hilarious. And he was just openly bragging about what the game is here. And then he was like, well, Ukraine is kind of like the Robin to Russia's Batman. And so our job is to steal Robin away from Batman and make him come over here and join us. And Vladimir Putin's so stupid that he won't do anything. And then Colbert's in his old character. So he's like, well, shouldn't Obama be spiking the football and saying, yeah, in your face, Putin? And Gideon Rose is like, well, no, because then Putin might invade Ukraine. So we wouldn't want to spike the ball. But there's these... Oh, yeah, here it is.
Let's play it. Go from the beginning.
Yeah, play it from the beginning.
There's the magazine, Foreign Affairs. Now, Gideon, help me out here. We've got a battle. The Ukraine, some of them want to go into the EU, the European Union, and some of them want to stay with Russia. If Ukraine's not in Europe right now, what continent is it on?
Well, it's part of Eurasia, but it's part of Eastern Europe and the former Soviet bloc. It's basically Robin to Russia's Batman. And the challenge here The challenge here is to try to attract it to the West, to get it to flip sides.
Oh,
The-
for
the
sure.
rebels in the streets, what are they fighting for?
They're fighting for a better future. Countries have a
That
development.
sounds like a political speech.
No, but it's actually true. Countries
100%
have
Dick.
developed over time. And Ukraine, basically, after the end of the Soviet Union, faced two tracks. It could stay a sort of stagnant, corrupt, authoritarian country tied to Russia, or it could essentially join the West. It could modernize, liberalize, become a democracy. At the last minute, when it looked like it was going to trade up from its sort of abusive relationship with its boyfriend from the hood to a nice, yuppie.
You're not loading these choices in
No,
any
but
way
it's actually-
whatsoever.
It's actually true. When it looked like it was going to trade up to a better environment, at the last minute, Putin offered a bribe, 15 billion.
That's a lot of cash.
It's a lot of cash. And the president, who himself was tied to the old elites and the eastern part of the country, ties to Russia, decided to back off the change and go
Do you know
join
how
Russia.
many pirate-themed restaurants you can buy with $15 billion?
The problem was the western parts of the country and the younger parts of the country and the more modern liberal parts of the country basically knew that they had no future being Russia's vassal. So they took to the streets.
Is America
Why am I-
taking
why am I in
sides
left street
this
here? That's not
way?
right.
If these people, the rebels are winning right now, right?
Yes.
I'm just trying to strafe there instead of just upping there.
Sure,
just 'cause it's faster, but maybe it's not.
But we won the country count, biatch.
It's actually a very good question, and the answer is that we don't want Russia to intervene and kick over the table like a game of Risk and take Ukraine back. And so
Would they do that? Could he send in troops?
Yes, he could. So we are choosing.
So does Ukraine have any troops of their own? Would they fight back?
Yes, but we don't want this to escalate, and we don't want Russia to crack down. So we want to basically distract Russia. Oh, look, you have the highest medal count. Oh, you did really well.
See, I gotta stop doing the left strafe, honestly.
And, you know, focus on the Olympics.
Here's a shiny object. It'll just take
It's adding so much fucking time.
country away from you.
Holy shit.
Now,
Isn't that funny?
power vacuum right now.
There's a power vacuum. The opposition is all together. It's easy to agree on getting rid of the bad old regime, and much harder to create a stable country in which everybody compromises and moves forward.
They need a strong leader to move the country forward. Do you know who's always good at a moment like that? Vladimir. Do you think he might volunteer to come in and help Ukraine?
The reason we don't want Putin to get involved in this, and so we want to try and involve him in the decision so that he allows Ukraine to go. We actually want a non-exclusive relationship with Ukraine. You can have a relationship
not
with
it.
too.
You're the only one making this into a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship.
Ukraine is basically choosing its future between two completely different courses of action, and we're trying to blur that choice so the old boyfriend doesn't get too upset.
Jesus Christ.
So just to, that's the point, but just to add to this, right? So, and it's not just that the guy at Foreign Affairs is saying stuff like this, right? But you also have those, when he says the people took to the streets, you can trace where they were getting their funding from, and it's a whole bunch of NGOs that are
Holy shit, come on, baby. Sub 30, please. This is fucking sub 30. Oh, fuck off. It's just so shitty.
that shit's wild, though, right?
It is wild. Wilder listening to the people theorizing why this went down.
It was like a 32 if I didn't fuck up the ending.
Go back. So explain what happened, James, just so it just makes it
I mean, I can keep all the video going. It's just that my good audio recording disconnected for a second.
So it's not. So it's good.
Yeah, we can keep all that in if we need to.
So it's just all these George Soros-funded NGOs were funding the militias on the ground who were overthrowing the government, and then there's a tape of Victoria Nuland, who's was at the State Department at the time, one of the top people at the State Department, and she was basically talking about who would be the new government that took over, who America didn't want in, who we did want in the new government.
No.
So it's not, what happened basically was, as Gideon Rose was even saying, the Ukrainian government was kind of siding with Russia, or at least a lot more pro-Russia. And then we overthrew that government and installed the pro-America government. And this to Putin, he had said over and over again, was a huge red line for him. Like Ukraine was the big line. And you could look, imagine, take it from our point of view, if like Russia was coming over here and overthrowing the pro-America government in Montreal and installing a pro-Russia government there. And, you know, like, this would be seen as, would you call that an unprovoked attack? You know, if we were to go in there and then go overthrow that government? So, again, I'm not justifying what he's doing, but, and then the other thing to this, right, that's important to add is, like, you remember the two big things that it's so weird no one, like, at least in the larger conversation, I don't see anyone connecting these things, is that there's two things, like, involving Ukraine that were very big, that happened very recently in American history, that very much connect to this war. And one is that our last president was impeached over a thing with Ukraine. And, like, what was that? And then the other thing is the current president's son was getting paid millions of dollars from a company, Burisma, in Ukraine.
Damn it.
And these things all connect. And basically what happened was, after the 2014 coup, this company, Burisma, they were, and by the way, Matt Taibbi's done incredible reporting on this. I highly recommend everyone read his stuff, his Substacks. Incredible. Unbelievable. But so basically, Burisma was in bed with the old government that had allied with Russia. And so when this government was overthrown, they were very worried. Because they were like, oh, we were in bed with the old government, and now there's this new government who's in there. And so instead of bribing the new government, they just went right to the source and bribed the son of the sitting vice president. Joe Biden, when he was vice president, was in charge of Ukraine policy. So they just went, that was why they put him there. And then they put some other, like, CIA guy or something like that on their board. They're just paying him money to just be like, hey, keep us in with you. And then Trump was telling them to investigate all of this shit. He got on the phone with them and was like, I want to investigate everything that was going on with Joe and Hunter Biden in Ukraine. And Donald Trump did. He got into an area that there's an argument it was not okay what he was doing, because he was kind of going like, maybe you don't get these weapons that I was going to send in unless you go investigate them. And this was his political opponent, so it was a little bit of a shady thing. But then the other story about that is that ultimately Trump caved, and he sent in the weapons to Ukraine. So now, not only did Obama overthrow the regime when Joe Biden was the point man, Joe Biden was running Ukraine policy, Obama leads this coup, overthrows that government and puts in a pro-Western government. Then Trump comes in, sends in a whole bunch of weapons to this new government that Obama wouldn't even send in because he was concerned it would provoke Russia. And then the next president is Joe Biden, the last guy who was the point man on Ukraine, who was there when this coup happened. Then he comes back in. And this is all like the context that led to Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine. So again, I'm not saying, and the other little thing I should mention there too is that Donbass region on the eastern portion of Ukraine is like,
I don't know why I thought I had more. I thought I had 4 bullets in the chamber.
When the new government came in 2014, and they were basically warring with the Kiev western portion of Ukraine since then. And they had a referendum in 2015 and voted overwhelmingly that they wanted to be a part of Russia. And Vladimir Putin didn't take them. But they voted that they wanted to be part of Russia, not a part of Ukraine. So it's just a very complicated mess, and it's the same thing with like the war on terrorism. If you're gonna tell this story of like what led to this, to understand where to go from here, the story has to include that America was intervening in the Middle East for decades before 9/11. The story can't just start at 9/11. You know what I mean? And so I guess the biggest part is what I said before, that the concern of all of us should be just that there's no nuclear conflict between America and Russia, which seems like we're like
it's so fucking dumb. It's so dumb.
More close
It's so dumb.
at any point in our lives than since the 80s.
It's like, it's so dumb, guys.
During that time, there was this hovering fear over most of America that there was a potential for nuclear war with Russia. We always thought about it. Man, when I was in high school, we thought about it all the time. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it was the greatest sigh of relief, like in my adult life. And it was the hover of war with Russia was out. And then people got relaxed. And then how long did that last before Operation Desert Storm?
A year?
Yeah, like maybe a year, right? And then it was like, holy shit, we're at war again. I remember watching it on television. I remember being so confused because when I was a kid, Vietnam ended. And, you know, it was like, I think it was 8 or something like that. I'm pretty sure I was living in San Francisco. I might have been a little older than that. Like, what year did Vietnam end?
72, 70. Well, wait, when did we pull out?
God damn it, man.
73?
So whatever year that was. So I was like probably 9 or 10 years old, I think.
Oh yeah, I guess 75, but I think we were pretty much out before then. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Okay, so either way. So I'm a kid, and I remember thinking at that time, like, wow, okay, this is great. Now we're never going to have war. Because, like, we figured out that we shouldn't have war.
Right.
I remember really thinking that as, like, whatever I was, 8 years old, 9 years old. I remember thinking, when I was hearing that the war was done, soldiers were coming home, I was thinking, oh my God, we're never going to have war again. Because I was terrified that I was going to have to get drafted, you know? And my stepfather, he didn't get drafted. He got lucky. He was one of the lucky few. Because it was a thing. Like, people would dodge the draft. They would fucking move to the woods. They moved to Canada. A lot of people moved to Canada. They were like, fuck this. And people don't understand how unpopular that was. That war was so unpopular that Muhammad Ali decided to give up his heavyweight championship of the world in his prime. In his prime. He was, when he fought Cleveland Big Cat Williams, which was like, what year was that? That was Ali's prime. And for the next 3 years, they made him sit out. And he didn't train, he didn't do anything, and he was a different fighter when he came back. Those 3 years of taking off, like of not training at all, like you could see it in his...
Yeah, he never moved the same way that he did before.
No. He was a different guy.
He still had some great fights and some great wins after that, but it wasn't the same.
Go to Cleveland Big Cat Williams. Show me that. Because Cleveland Big Cat Williams was this like super powerful heavyweight. He was jacked and he looked fantastic. He was a knockout puncher. And Muhammad Ali just danced around him. It was magic, man. And he hit him with this fucking combination that, like, if a middleweight threw combinations like this, you would be shocked. But here you have a heavyweight.
How light he is on his feet.
Oh, man. This was when he was in his prime. This was Ali at the very best. This is before they took it away from him. And if you look at him then, it's timing, everything.
Like, this, it's just so fucking cursed.
Look how Jack Williams is. I mean, he's a dangerous fucking puncher. And he's stalking Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali's just slowly putting it on, just finding the openings, looking, showing him this, showing him that, never standing right in front of him. And as he got older, he couldn't do that.
That's what I gotta go for. I gotta go for those two fast ones.
He essentially let Foreman hit him. He tired him out by doing the rope-a-dope on him. But back then, Ali was just... Sonny Liston was fucking perplexed, especially in their first fight. The second fight, it looks like Sonny Liston took a dive. But in the first fight, he was trying to get Ali to the point where he put liniment on his gloves. And he went back to his corner. He said, he's got something on his gloves. He goes, and keep playing that. And Angelo Dundee was like, you can't quit. We can't take the gloves off, champ. Like, you're in the heavyweight title fight. Like, you got to fight through this. So he fights through this and starts busting Liston up. And it eventually stops him and wins the heavyweight title when Liston quits in his corner. But he was, he was so good, man. He was so fast, and nobody had seen a heavyweight move like this.
This looks like it'd be so frustrating to fight someone like this.
Oh, so
like
frustrating.
You're just walking them down, and then they're constantly gone, and you're...
But there he starts tagging him. So he starts tagging him. And now Cleveland's confused because now he's getting hurt. He's getting hurt by this guy's moving backwards, and he can't hit him. Look at that jab. Look at that jab, dude. I mean, and his hands are low, and look at it, steps in with a left hook, jabbing to the body, and now he starts to piece him up. And when he starts connecting with him, you could see the magic that he had back then. It was just, there was combinations that came from him that you never saw a heavyweight throw. You would see like Sugar Ray Robinson throw combinations like this. To see a guy who's 200 plus pounds doing it was just unheard of.
And even since then, I mean, when have you ever seen a heavyweight fights like this?
No, but nobody fights like him. Nobody fights like him.
And you'd think someone would have, because he's like the greatest ever, someone would have studied this and tried to replicate it. But like, no.
Ali could knock you out too, man. So once he starts finding Cleveland's number, and here you see him finding Cleveland's number, he's really starting to land some decent combinations on him. And Cleveland's still coming forward, looking to land the haymaker. He's got serious power, and that's why he's so confident, right? He's like moving forward, because he knows if he can hit this fucking dude like he hits everybody else, everybody goes night-night. And all this dancing and moving around and stuff, be inconsequential if he can land.
It reminds me of the way Anderson Silva used to fight, like in his prime, where he'd dance around, and then when he start really getting in his rhythm, just open up like crazy. He was 185 pounds.
Yeah, there's a little bit
like,
of
it's
that
just
too,
so
but
fucking
Anderson
dumb.
was much more subtle in his movement. Anderson
And of course,
was,
kicks and knees and all that shit.
Anderson was just a master computer. He would like
Yeah.
download all your movements
Yeah.
and put them in the master computer, and then somewhere around the end of the first round, he would start lighting you up, and you're like, oh shit.
He's like, yep, he collected all the data.
The only people that were successful against Anderson made Anderson lead. It's very interesting. Patrick Cote was one of the first guys to figure that out.
Yeah.
He made Anderson lead. And Patrick was super dangerous, like serious one-punch knockout power. And so he had that right hand cocked, and he made Anderson lead, and it was a very boring fight because Anderson wouldn't lead. And then somewhere in the fight, unfortunately, Patrick blew his knee out. And he blew his knee out like throwing a kick or something like that. His knee exploded.
It was.
Collapsed.
I remember. I think it was when he was going into the third round, and he held up number 3. I go, that's how big the aura of invincibility around Anderson Silva was. That he was like, I'm in the third round,
Yeah.
and everyone was like, how is this even possible?
Yeah.
How is it possible he hasn't killed you already?
Well, Patrick was very smart smart in his approach, and he fought a very intelligent fight. If you're going to fight a guy like Anderson Silva, and Patrick always had the threat of the one big knockout punch. He knocked out everybody, man. Patrick Cote, if he connected, woo, that guy was throwing some fucking heat. He's coaching now. He was, he was one of the most recent UFCs I saw him. It's good to see him coaching. It's good to see guys who've like got a ton of experience and great fighters.
What is this? Why are you here?
Some of them actually make better
It's like,
coaches
it's just
than
so
they
much,
fight.
guys.
Yeah, like Dean
It's
Thomas
just-
was
it's
a
just
really
too
good
much.
fighter, but he's probably a
Like,
better
it's just
coach
too
than
much.
best fighter. Because he's like one of the best.
He's got the best insight whenever we come to him.
So
Like, he
dumb.
should
Yeah,
actually
he's
do-
great.
He should be doing commentary for events as well, not just doing the thing that he's doing that way. I would love to do a show with him where me and him do commentary, like if it's one.
Wow, this is fast.
He's great, but it's like
Please.
whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Whatever magic.
Oh
we're
my
talking
God.
here with fighters, like Ali had it in a way during I think this fight. This was like my favorite version of Ali.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of a little bit of a
Yes.
mismatch ultimately, we know, because Ali
Please.
went on to be the greatest.
It's fine.
arguably
It's not
of all
very
time.
good, but it's like
when
a
you're
completion.
watching the way he's able to do it, like there, look at that 1-2
Moving
moving
back,
backwards.
yeah.
What?
Let me see that.
No,
again.
you can't
Just
be
backwards.
serious.
Look at that. Let me see that. Watch this. Big, big, big. Oh my goodness. Moving backwards.
It's
He
just so
drops him, and
fucking
that's when he knows he
stupid.
has him, right? He's
This
been
is just
touching
so
this guy
fucking
up,
stupid,
touching
this
guy
level.
up and landing good combinations, but now
Well, it might not have been PB
Now you
35. It's just so
he's got this one
stupid, this
style. He's a
fucking
move-forward
level.
guy. So
I
he
don't
can't,
like-
back
I don't wanna
up
do
and
this
start,
anymore.
You know, moving and dancing and avoiding trouble. He's got to stand right in front of him. And Ali's just fucking tuning him up and drops him again. Bro, he was sensational. back
come
there.
on, man.
Sensational.
Like-
I mean, he barely got hit in this fight. Barely
Yeah,
got
yeah.
hit. Barely got hit. Didn't get hit with anything clean. It was just beautiful, man. Just artistry, the movement in and out. Look at that left, right.
Jesus.
Woo!
Stop the
And then he
fight.
stands over him with his hands up in the air. Come on, son. Come on.
So was this
son.
one of his last before they wouldn't let him fight for not going to the draft?
So, yes, this was the last.
This was
I
the
believe.
last one?
I believe this was there might have been one other fight. I'm not sure. So he makes it to the final bell. He makes it to the bell because he got saved by the bell in that last round. So he gets up. They move him to his stool. But now he's fucked, man. Now Ali's on fire. Look at him, man. Just, you know, if people want to see Ali, I always want to show them this one. Because this was Ali at his most beautiful. I mean, this was just fucking masterful.
He's just fighting a perfect fight.
Oh, look at these combinations, man. I mean, and how gutsy is Cleveland Big Cat Williams that he keeps getting up. So now he's been dropped 4 times.
Yeah, they should have thrown the towel in.
100%, but back then they didn't give a fuck, dude. You
Yeah.
fought. Dudes
Wait,
just, they were
what?
harder people, man.
Yeah, for
It was
sure.
a harder sport. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, come on, man. Look at this combination. And look at him avoid those punches. Look at him. Like it's like 2 magnets, like the gloves can't touch him. And then he clips him with that right hand. I mean, this shit is just artistic. This is the most martial arts, the most
Right.
artistic of martial arts. And that's it. That referee's, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. And no complaints. That's enough. My
No,
God.
that wasn't a stoppage. That was a saving.
Was that his last fight before Jerry Quarry? Because Jerry Quarry was his comeback fight, and Jerry, you could see in that fight, like his body looked different.
It says here this was on November 14th. 66, and the article I have here says he was convicted on June 20th, 67. So he could have had another one in between.
Let's go to his Wikipedia and see if that. I want to say that was it. I want to say that was it.
You remember
but
that?
That to me is like there's fights where you like. For me, it's like I know it's not the most important fight in his career, but Marvis Frazier versus Mike Tyson. There's fights where you just go, God damn, who's gonna fuck with that version of that guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike Tyson versus Marvin Frazier.
Oh, yeah, I've
that's
seen
my
that
fight.
one, right, yeah.
And I say, you know, Mike Tyson knocked out Larry Holmes. Mike Tyson beat all these great fighters. Yes. But the Mike Tyson that took out Marvis Frazier was one of the scariest fucking human beings that ever walked into a ring. Ever.
He fought twice.
He fought twice after that.
Yeah. And then Jake Waters after.
Okay, so he won,
it still was a
won
year
by
before.
unanimous decision against Ernie Terrell and won with a
Like
knockout
what?
against Zara Foley. That was another great fight. If you go to that fight too, that was another fucking fantastic performance. So, but the Cleveland Big Cat Williams was just an exceptionally impressive one. So it's that and then 3 years of nothing.
You remember the?
I might never play this level again after tonight. It's driving me
It's like one of
insane.
my favorite jokes ever. Like Carlin's bit, he was like, Muhammad Ali. He goes, he had a strange job.
Like, it's not fun?
Beats people up for a living. That was his job. And then the government says, we don't want you to beat people up anymore. We want you to kill people. And he goes, no, that's where I draw the line. and then the government goes, well, if you won't kill people, we won't let you beat them up. It's just like such a great bit because it's just completely true. It's like when you put it like this, how is this not the most insane shit ever? That's literally what the supposed like leaders are deciding.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why he was so important. He wasn't
Oh
just
my
an
God,
important,
man.
athlete, like the greatest boxer that we'd ever seen as a heavyweight for sure. But he was also an important cultural figure because when he was saying no Viet Cong guy ever did anything to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go over there and kill people. And he said it publicly. Like, this is why I have no problem with Vietnam people. Why am I going over there to fight them? Why is my government telling me to go over there and kill people? I'm not doing that.
Yeah, and as it turns out, it was for no
Like,
good
how many
reason.
times?
All sold off a lie.
Yeah, all
Just like all
sold
the
off
other
of
ones.
another conspiracy. The Gulf of Tonkin incident is a real conspiracy.
And that's not even something that people debate
No,
anymore.
it's not
It's just
debated.
like this is just known. And
Go to the
again,
Gulf of Tonkin so we can, because I don't want to fuck this up. But the way we got into the Vietnam War was basically just a made-up story.
And it's true with the Lusitania in World War I too. It was like completely the way the story was told to the American people.
What's that
It was
story?
It was basically that there was like this ship that had Americans on it was shot down by German submarines. And they were like, well, why would they do this? They knew it was just a ship of civilians. But then it turns out that actually the ship was delivering weapons to the British. And so it's like, oh, yeah, you were delivering weapons into a war zone. Got a little bit more reasonable to shoot down your ship.
The Gulf of Tonkin incident occurred August of 1964. North Vietnamese warships purportedly attacked United States warships. The USS Maddox and the USS Turner J. Two separate occasions in the Gulf of Tonkin, a body of water neighboring modern-day Vietnam. But what actually happened? New documents and tapes reveal that what historians could not prove, there was not a second attack on U.S. Navy ships in the Tonkin Gulf.
This level's just so
in
fucking
August of
stupid.
1964. Furthermore,
really is.
the evidence suggests a disturbing and deliberate attempt by the Secretary of Defense McNamara to distort the evidence and mislead Congress. So was there an initial attack?
Like, come
and
on.
Not a secondary attack? Was there any attack at all?
Oh,
Yeah, I haven't
It's
read
so
up on this
stupid.
in a while. But they definitely made that up, and it was completely misrepresented. And yeah, it was all like, an
See, but
effort.
It's hard because it still seems like the official story is that it's not a hoax. The official, so you see, look what it's saying there. Like, it says it was passed on August 7, 1964 by the U.S. Congress after an alleged attack on 2 U.S. naval destroyers sanctioned in the coast of Vietnam. It doesn't say that that was a hoax.
Well, the history.com version probably wouldn't go into the
Right. Right. But is it a conspiracy is my question. Or is it just proven fact over time that just hasn't been accepted because the initial narrative by the government has never been rescinded?
Yeah, I think that it at least partially has been admitted. that at least they lied about the way they presented it.
Jamie,
See, what do you?
just
Do a full research project on the Gulf of Tonkin right now.
do. You have time. Is there a way to see whether or not it was a hoax? Like, how do they know if
Well,
it was or was not a hoax?
There's no source to go to for that necessarily.
So when people say that the Gulf of Tonkin was a hoax, are they just hearing it from me and repeating it?
No, it's not just from you. There's a lot of people who have been saying this.
No, Oliver Stone said it.
Yeah.
But how much of that is based on provable fact?
Yeah, I'd have to. I remember learning all about this, but it was like 13 years ago.
Yeah,
and I'm a little rusty.
I'm a little
on,
rusty. It's
on
one of
it.
those things I'm glad we just looked it up because it's one of those things that I just repeat.
Yeah. But sometimes you repeat it based off your previous memory of this. But I'm like, no, I remember knowing this,
Dude,
so I'm pretty confident in repeating it.
That is the worst thing about memory. Like you can repeat a memory of it wrong.
Yep.
Here's another reporting of this. It says there remains no doubt that North Vietnamese attacked the USS Maddox in the first incident on August 2nd.
Although it does appear that the United States provoked this attack.
Right,
The
right.
second attack, which took place on August 4th, 1964,
And what the fuck?
Is that a commercial? Oh my God, they just make you watch a commercial.
Got
They're
it.
like, oh, you should be right in the middle of reading by now.
Website
So-
compromised. I don't even know which one I clicked on.
is that what it said? Website compromised?
No, that's what happened. I'm telling you, that's what happened. That website. See, it's like it's just going back to some ads.
You have to
Fucking some
confirm
ads.
that
It's a
you're
big
not
boost.
a robot.
No,
That was a huge boost. It was a massive boost.
More of us.
That was really dumb.
Make sure you're not a robot.
I don't think it's just good people doing their
They're
job.
just fine folks doing their job.
Like, it's so
to kill
stupid.
democracy.
Like, these boosts are
Find
just
out
so
what you
brutal.
click on and put it in a fucking database. That's AI slowly gathering information on us.
Yeah, something's up with it. Well,
It's so
but even as
stupid.
crazy as the war in Vietnam was, and it's just horrible. It slaughtered like so many like people in a country, so we could impose that
Yeah.
they wouldn't be ruled by the communists or something like that. And what is this? How many Americans died in that war? It's like 50, 60,000.
Okay, American planes hit North Vietnam after a second attack on our destroyers. Move taken to halt new aggression, announced the Washington Post headline on August 5th, 1964. The same day, on the front page of the New York Times reported, President Johnson has ordered retaliatory action against gunboats and certain supporting facilities in North Vietnam after renewed attacks against American destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. But there was no second attack by North Vietnam. No renewed attack
What?
against
Like
American
what?
destroyers. By reporting official
What?
claims as absolute truths, American journalism opened the floodgates for the bloody
So dumb.
Vietnam War. A pattern took hold. Continuous government lies passed on by pliant mass media, leading to over 50,000 American deaths and millions of Vietnamese casualties. The official story was the North Vietnamese torpedo boats launched an unprovoked attack against the U.S. destroyer on a routine patrol in the Tonkin Gulf on August 2nd, and that North Vietnamese PT boats followed up with a deliberate attack on a pair of U.S. ships 2 days later. The truth was very different. Rather than being on a routine patrol on August 2nd, the U.S. destroyer Maddox was actually engaged in aggressive intelligence gathering maneuvers in sync with coordinated attacks on North Vietnam by the South Vietnamese Navy and the Laotian Air Force. The day before, 2 attacks on North Vietnam had taken place, writes scholar Daniel C. Hallen. These assaults were a part of a campaign of increasing military pressure on the North that the United States had been pursuing since early 1960s.
Not bad. Not great. Not
On the
great,
night
but
of August 4th, the Pentagon
PB
proclaimed
pace,
that a
PB
second
pace.
attack by North Vietnamese PT boats had occurred earlier that day in the Tonkin Gulf. A report cited by President Johnson as he went on national TV later that evening to announce a momentous escalation.
it was really hitting the rail. You can
airstrikes
really hit the
toward
rail.
North
Are you
Vietnam.
serious?
But Johnson ordered U.S.
Oh.
to retaliate for North Vietnamese torpedo attack
What?
that never
I
happened.
didn't even know that was a thing.
So it didn't happen.
Yeah. So
I
basically,
can read the whole article, but this is boring already.
yeah, but basically,
honestly
the whole
didn't
thing
even know that was a
was
thing.
completely misconstrued and made up, right? Like, so that
I think I
they're
knew it
saying
was a
that
thing. I
they
just
acted
friggin'
like,
wanted
oh,
to
it was just
deny
a,
it,
this
'cause it was
unprovoked
perfectly
attack on
lined
our
up.
naval ships. When actually, the first attack, our naval ship was involved in this what they called aggressive intelligence gathering. So basically, coordinating with the other side who was bombing them, and they had just been bombed twice by the other side
Check out
in
this
the days
strat.
preceding it. So they responded, and then the second attack just never even happened.
Right.
So that's, I mean, and the thing about it is that it's like they knowingly lied about this because they
Oh, I don't
wanted
have the key?
a pretense to get into the war.
Whatever.
And it's so much how all of these wars start, and all of the ones since. But the difference is, like, at least in Vietnam, basically the thing has been since World War II that, like, we've fought a whole lot of wars, but we don't fight wars with nuclear armed powers. We fought a few proxy wars with nuclear armed powers, like Vietnam. I had a proxy war with Russia in Vietnam.
God damn it.
Or in Korea, like a proxy war with Russia, but in Korea. But there was a buffer zone there. Like, it wasn't right on Russia's border, and it wasn't right on our border. So we could kind of like fight these proxy wars out there. But the thing with Ukraine is that it's like I really think the thing that scares me about the nuclear threat from Vladimir Putin is that I feel like he can't lose this war. And the American position is that he must lose. He must completely lose the war and retreat and give Ukraine all back to Ukraine. And it's like, however you feel about that, it's just not going to happen. That's not going to happen. He's not handing the whole thing back over. And you may think that's wrong, and I kind of think it's wrong too. I don't know. I think maybe he should keep Donbass. I don't really know. But it's like, it's not
Like,
going to
it's
happen.
fuck this
And
fucking level,
Joe
man.
Biden is acting like this is he must
Maybe
win
I
this
should just
war.
run
That's
at
not
it.
really true.
And
We
then
don't
strafe
really need it.
left.
But Vladimir Putin does need it. He can't lose a war right on his border. You know, like, that's a different type of thing to give up. And so now he's saying that if the territory of Russia is infringed on, he will use nuclear weapons. And he said straight up, this is not a bluff. He goes, this is not a bluff. I will use nukes. He's just said this the other day. And then Zelensky goes on and gives a speech, and Zelensky says that his standard is not just that Russia has to
Like
retreat
what?
and give back all the territory to Ukraine,
What?
but that Russia must be punished for the aggression into Ukraine. And then Zelensky says that if Russia even thinks about using nukes, that the other nuclear-armed countries should use their nukes against Russia. And you're just like, dude, what the fuck are we talking about here? And, like, I'm sorry, no, we shouldn't. We shouldn't use nukes against Russia preemptively because this Zelensky guy wants us to.
The people that we have that run the country, there's not one thing that you point to and you go, well, they're fucking awesome at that. Right? Not one thing. Not one thing where you're like, I have full trust in them when it comes to that.
Not a single
Not
thing.
a single thing. Yet we're entrusting them with the biggest, most important thing ever.
Right.
Avoiding a nuclear war. Imagine how crazy that is. Now imagine what kind of person wants that job. Like these unexceptional people that we're talking about. These aren't the people that are like the thought leaders of the world. These are the people that win the popularity contests. And a lot of them are winning because they're
Wow.
connected to whatever the fucking current hive mind ideology is. And they pump up and they use these words and they say the certain things
Like
that that
what?
group is saying, whether it's on the right or
Like
the
what?
left. That's what a lot of these people are doing.
Well, it's kind of, and
It's
it's
a lot
kind
of
of the
human beings
flaw. It's a flaw in the democratic process in a way.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, I'll just play to the most low information,
Right.
voters who really outnumber the high information voters.
You know what's gonna
As-
change that?
What's that?
Mind reading.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh,
maybe that's what we
that's
got to hope
coming,
for.
dude.
Let's hope that comes before the nuclear war.
I think that's going to be like life before the internet and life after the internet, but like times new. And I think it's coming.
Okay,
I
whatever.
don't think that's.
Okay, whatever.
I don't think it's an if. It's a matter of when, and only if we don't blow ourselves up or get involved in some sort of a natural disaster.
Right.
Get hit by an asteroid, super volcano, that kind of shit could fuck everything up. But if that doesn't happen, if we can just keep going on this path and let these super nerds figure shit out for the next 1,000 years or 100 years or whatever it is, that it's gonna change everything. Because we're gonna know how people actually operate, how they're actually thinking. And it's gonna be really weird. Because like all of our thoughts of romance and interpersonal relationships.
Like, please
and
boost
how
me,
people
like, the
really feel
proper
around
way,
you,
please.
All of them are gonna be exposed like we're all on mushrooms. It's gonna be a
Yeah,
very
that's-
weird
Just
thing.
no way.
And I'd
Just no.
imagine, I mean, I don't know enough about
So-
this, but I'd
just
imagine
so
even
dumb.
before you get to the point of just reading someone's thoughts, you probably get to the point of just reading whether they're lying or not. You know what I
Like,
mean? Just
look at this,
knowing
look at
whether
this,
what they're
look
saying
at
is
it,
a lie. Like
look at
being
it.
able to kind of like
Look
figure
at
out,
it.
not like a lie detector test, which isn't as like reliable, But like actually being able to find out, no, we've figured out the scientific, like, indicators that somebody's lying, and you could wear something, you could have a lens on that will tell you this person's lying. Or whether they're
This
telling the
level,
truth.
dude.
Sometimes you just know. Like, why do you just know? You're not always right. Like, there's certain people that can just lie, right? And they're probably really good at it, and they do it a lot. But with some people, like when they're lying to you, there's like a feeling.
Yeah.
Like a disruption in the force. Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and just not even, and that, like, that's almost like what I was saying before when we were talking about Crystal and Sagar, and them, like, where you go, like, they're not lying to you, and I just know they're not lying to you. I don't know either of them personally, but I just know. I could just watch the show and be like, those people aren't lying to you.
No, they're
and I
not
don't think they're
lying
right about everything. I probably disagree with both of them about several things, agree with them about other things,
But
they're not lying to you.
But
Like,
that's supposed to happen, man. The
Yeah.
idea that you're supposed to agree with everybody about everything is so crazy.
Yeah.
And this is part of the problem with having a right and a left, is that you get attached to that team. And they'll use you, they'll label you in order to like frame you in some
Oh, and you
nefarious
see
way.
it. You see it all the time. I mean, with people, and then it's like the worse, the more heated things get, the more people get like dug in to
Yeah.
each team because you're so furious with the other team that you're like, well, I gotta be with this team.
You know
So
what I
then,
get-
even if that team does something wrong, you're like, well, I gotta be with this team to protect me from this other team.
100%. And have you been paying attention to this new leader of Italy, the woman?
Yeah, I saw her the speech that everybody's flipping out about.
Bro.
And I've been following a bit about it.
It is
very
fascinating.
interesting. Yeah.
This is what's fascinating. There's two groups of people that I follow, and their reactions to it are so hyper different. There's like the right-wing people like, fuck yeah, Italy. And then there's the left-wing people like the far-right, new leader. Like, this is dangerous,
A fascist, right.
fascist rhetoric and connected to fascism.
They've
and
really
far
overplayed
right.
that fascist hand, because if that's what they're saying, this the Brothers of Italy or something, I think is their political party, and they're saying that they represent some neo, Mussolinian movement or something like that. I don't know, but I do think that, like, I don't know what you think about it, but I thought what she said in that speech, I got it, and I get why it's appealing, and I don't think there was anything, at least in what she said
did she
in that.
say? Can we read what she said?
But like,
She said that.
fuck you.
Yeah, well, okay, that's also true. I'm just assuming that the words on the bottom of the screen when she was talking was actually what she was saying.
It's like
I do
those
not
Hitler
know.
memes.
Yeah.
You ever see that one when it's like, I can't believe Dunkin' Donuts is having a sale, and it's like Hitler screaming. What is those fucking memes are so funny.
It would be so funny if I'm just saying all this stuff and I just read the wrong translation. Where I was like, I don't know, she just said like
Whatever.
family and
It's
Christianity
probably
is
33
fine.
or
And you're
something.
Like, but she actually said was we
Fine.
need to round up the Jews. And be like, oh, okay.
We're gonna go for lower, but we're gonna take this
Then
PB2.
I'm gonna go on record and change my opinion. I didn't like that
But it'll be
part.
too late because I already have you.
Yeah, that's but
Dave
you're right. I
Smith
should
is
protect
all for
myself on
rounding
that.
up the Jews. It's
She goes-
written down.
she goes, but I'm a Jew. You go, he wants to round up himself. This is
It's self-hate. He's an Uncle Howie. What is the?
I was trying to read I'm assuming she said it in Italian, so now I'm
She
assuming
did.
that
well,
this
she
was
also
translated
spoke.
into
She
English.
spoke at CPAC and had a speech in English.
Trying to assume this is what she said, but I don't know.
She said if this is, we're assuming this is the translation is correct.
32, not
If
bad, not
we
bad, not very
are
good, but
called
not
to
like
govern
not.
this nation, we will do it for everyone.
If we can get
We will
sub
do it for
30,
all
that'd be
Italians.
so hype.
We will do it with the aim
That'd be really
of
hype.
uniting the people of this country. Maloney said at her party's Rome headquarters. Italy chose us, she said. We will not betray the country as we never have. As polls in the run-up to Sunday's vote showed her as likely winner, Mallory has moderated her far-right message in an apparent attempt to reassure the European Union and other international partners. This is a time for being responsible, Maloney said, appearing live on television, describing the situation for Italy and the European Union as particularly complex. Maloney, who campaigned on a motto of God, country, and family, said the result was only a beginning. This is a night of pride for Brothers of Italy, but is a starting point, not a finish line, she was quoted as saying by The Guardian.
Yeah, well, but already that, just at that point of, because they're saying like, well, she campaigned on God, country, and family, and I understand, I can understand So I grew up in a very liberal, area, and I understand where like a lot of people on the left don't like the idea of a political leader campaigning on God, nation, and family. Like they're like, hey, this should somehow like government should be neutral on those issues or something like that. But at least I would think like if you're like a liberal or a leftist or something, at least like understand like why do you think it is that message is so appealing to so many people? And you have to almost objectively say that like, look, those things are things that a lot of people care about. Like just in the 20th century alone, how many people were willing to go and fight in wars under the banner of nationalism, like for their country, Yeah. And like people care about their country. And obviously people care about their God a lot. And obviously people care about their family a lot. And what I saw of her, assuming the translation was correct, in her speech was she was saying that these things are constantly under attack right now. And there's no need, like we don't have to live in a society where like Christianity and patriotism and family is constantly being demonized. Like all of the things that we like to identify as are constantly being demonized. And I would at least like say to like left-wingers, if you keep up this game of like demonizing all of those things, there's going to be a right-wing response to it. People are going to rally around the political leaders who are like saying like, no, we're for traditional families and Christianity and national greatness. And I'm not even saying I'm for that, but I get the appeal of it.
Yeah, but not even saying traditional family, just family, period.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not labeling it a traditional family, but the idea
I get
that
the
those
impression that
things
that's
would
what
be
she means.
offensive.
Yeah,
So
it shouldn't
wouldn't-
be.
But here's the thing, it wouldn't be offensive if it was a particular God. So like if you're talking about Islam, like if you are against anything that is Islamic or Muslim,
come
you'll be
on,
thought
man.
of as Islamophobic. There's no Christianophobic, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's really weird because there's a political leaning in this country where people look at people that have certain religious beliefs and they'll mock them. Like Christianity is a very easy one to mock. Because, well, the easiest are like Scientology. That's number one.
Sure,
and
sure.
then Mormonism is, it's like Joseph Smith was 14. It's kind of, it's wild shit, right? But those are easy.
Oh,
but
come
when
on,
it comes
man.
to like the one that you're allowed to mock, you're allowed to mock Christians. That's the one that's like the easiest to mock. If you mock Muslims and the Islamic culture, like you're in danger.
Yeah, but I
You're
would
in
also
physical danger.
Yes, I also think you're right about all of that, but also a distinction that I'd make is like it seems to me when there's the mocking.
Yeah,
of
I'm not gonna play much
Mormons or something
longer.
Like that is
I just
more
thought I
of
could get
kind of
maybe a
like
sub-30
making fun of
PV,
them,
but maybe
whereas
not.
with Christians there seems to be like real vitriol in it with them. Like they act like there's more hatred
And it's
toward
connected
them.
to stupidity. It's almost connected to like a lack of intelligence and a lack of education, and
Like what?
Yeah, no question about
It's so
that.
fucking
And when
dumb.
in fact it's like, the truth is that for better or for worse, and there was a lot of both, there's a lot of good and bad, but Christianity, I mean, had a huge impact on civilization, and it's like it was the foundational ideology of Western civilization. Now that doesn't mean you have to be a Christian, but all of that is really dismissed, like the contributions that Christianity made to the world that so many of us enjoy.
well, you mean it's not like Christianity needs a fucking star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but it's an ideology that millions of people hold, and there's tenets in it that could lead to a better world if people followed them. That's undeniable.
For
To
sure.
treat people as if they're your brothers and sisters, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's certain principles involved in a lot of religions that guide ethical behavior.
Yeah, and
the problem is they're
you need-
so outdated.
Well, that's true, but that's the problem, right?
You're
But
reading these things. It's so like they condone slavery. They treat women as second-class citizens. There's like a lot of like weird
yes,
shit.
but most of that stuff, at least in Christianity, isn't actually followed in practice today, right? Like people aren't
Right,
practicing
right.
slavery and aren't practicing treating women like second-class citizens the way it's laid out in the Bible. And the thing, like the flaw to me, at least, the flaw in atheism is that it's always the idea is always sold as like, well, look, you have like you have reason and then you have faith. And faith is believing something in the absence of reason, so reason is preferable to faith. But the issue is when you remove religion, it never is in any mass level replaced with reason. It's always replaced with another religion.
Right.
You know, it's and because the desire to worship is so hardwired into humans that, like, you know, you look at the most insane, like, woke kids on some college campus. They're all atheists.
Yeah.
But they're not atheists. They're the most religious zealots amongst us. You know what I mean? So it's like you remove this thing, and then it's like the promise of this vacuum will be filled with reason never really comes true. And at least, while you're right when you say, like, okay, well, these religions are very old and outdated, but the flip side to that is like, well, they've been stable for thousands of years. These have at least been able to work. And if you accept that, basically there's going to be some religion, whatever it is. You know, like the Nazis basically got rid of religion. The commies really got rid of religion. But there was just state religion is what, you know, filled the void. And it was much worse than Christianity. So you're like, if there's going to be a religion one way or the other, I'd probably like the one that is at least has thousands of years of stability behind it and has at least, like, moderated on its worst issues and is no longer being used as a justification for how many times you can beat your slave a day, even though that is in the book. You know what I mean? But, like, people aren't really doing that anymore, so...
Yeah. If you're going to base it all on that, to the word, then you're gonna have a problem in modern society.
Sure.
Like then how can you be a Christian and follow those rules?
Well, yeah, that's gonna be tough.
If that's what it's saying. But I think what people need is something that makes sense for today. You know, something that, and I think it's probably something. I think if there's going to be a thing that brings people, the problem is the problem with that is just like the problem with anything else. It's humans, and humans get involved in things, and ego get involved in things, and next thing you know, you're a guru. The next thing
Come
you know,
on.
all your disciples,
Stop shooting me into the corner.
like wild country. You know, like that's where it fucking goes. Because of humans, because we are primates, and we do have these fucking weird dominant.
This fucking level, guys.
Even when you connect
This
to the
fucking
psychedelics,
level.
it creates these people that, like, they get all this adoration out of, like, introducing ceremonies and having people, you know, come together and do these things together, and it's a weird thing.
Well, there's always, with all these things, there's a lot of benefits, but there's also, like, the negative sides, right? So it's like people do have, particularly with, like, psychedelics, like with mushrooms and LSD and stuff like that. People do have these, like, pretty amazing experiences.
Yes.
And I've had some, and there's a lot you can learn about the world through them. But then they also do make it kind of like, you know, and I've never done a
Finger
DMT
slipped.
or ayahuasca or whatever, but particularly with those, like,
I think I'm pretty
you are in a
undone
state
pretty
where,
soon.
like,
Thanks
okay,
for
if you have
being
some
here.
guru or whatever who's, like, leading you through the journey, that person is put in a position of a lot of power over you now. You know what I mean? And you see, like, this stuff with Manson.
Gotta
he
be
would, like,
pretty
he would stay
clean
sober
run
and
to
give
be
them all the mushrooms and then
sub-friggin'
guide them in these crazy directions
30.
and
Well, did
stuff
you read
like
Tom
that.
O'Neill's book?
No.
Oh my God. I've said it for a million times. I'm sorry if you heard this before, folks. There's a great book called Chaos by Tom O'Neill. Tom O'Neill was Greg Fitzsimmons' next door neighbor. And this was like fucking 20 years ago. He's writing this article about Manson. So Greg never suggests people. He says, you've got to have this guy on. He just finished this book. It took him 20 years to make it. And he details how he kept getting fired and he missed deadlines, but he's just so obsessed with the data and trying to figure out what's going on. But that whole fucking thing with Manson was a CIA psyop.
Yeah.
He was a part of all that MK Ultra LSD studies. They were
crazy.
letting him out of jail. He was getting arrested, and then they would go to the people that arrested him and go, no, let him go. And they would have to let him go. And these sheriffs were like, it's above my pay grade. And they had to let him go. And he was connected to a bunch of different robberies and shit. He was on parole. He should have been locked up. Jolly West visited him in jail. It's documented. They visited him in jail. And he was a part of their program. They would take people, especially people that were charismatic, and teach them how to use psychedelics to influence people.
Wasn't Ted Kaczynski was like a similar thing, right?
He was a similar thing. He was a part of the Harvard stuff.
Right.
And he went fucking cuckoo.
And they just fucked with him too. I think with the Ted Kaczynski thing, part of it was just fucking with him. Like, not even, it's just insane. Like, just make him feel like shit. They're like, what if we just treat him like shit constantly? I wonder what would happen if we did that.
so many things went wrong with him. Did you watch the Netflix documentary?
I haven't seen
Yeah,
that. I've read a decent amount about it, though.
He had some sort of an illness when he was a baby. He was really young. So they took him to a hospital where no one touched him. They just left him in his crib to scream and cry and just kept him fed for like months. And it fucked him up.
Yeah.
And his brother talks openly about how he just like connected those times, like, you know, him being a child, and like he just had no empathy for people, no connection with people. Like they raised a monster by just not having him be touched.
And then that same guy ends
Gets
up to
involved
go
in the
get
Harvard
fucked
LSD
with in
studies.
these studies. Jesus
And then
Christ.
he goes on to blow people up. Like, what a shocker.
Yeah,
what
really.
the fuck, man? And he was a super genius, which is like the worst combination ever.
And so, of course, like, there's these things, right? Like, if you, like, you know, when people first, like, really started discovering, when they discovered LSD, and when people, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like there is this thing where it's like, wow, this has so much potential. It's very interesting, and we don't exactly understand it, but it really creates these like, experiences. And then it's like you leave it to, like, the government to be like, well, let's use this in the most fucked up way imaginable. How about that?
Let's dose up Johns when they're going to brothels and study them through mirrors.
I mean, it's just insane. Oh, but I do think there's like even with pot, which is, I guess, just a milder hallucinogen, right? I think there are a lot of benefits to smoking pot, but then there's also like these real problems with it. I know I used to smoke.
Are you
a ton of pot,
serious?
and I
You
think
can't
that,
be serious.
I kind of credit. I
What?
think it's one of the reasons why
That's
I'm
so
good at breaking
stupid, guys.
down this type of stuff. I think it really helped. I think there was something about it that was it allowed me to kind of zoom out and question things and look at them in different ways. You know what I mean?
I can't believe
it's a
that,
very,
guys.
you remember the video you did that went super viral? I think it was before you started the podcast. It was right around the time that went real viral about you talking about war and stuff like that. And it was like this viral video, someone edited it together, and it was all you talking about. And I remember you said in the thing, I loved it, where you were like, wait a minute, so we fight these wars. You're telling me we send big metal machines of death to go like rip human beings apart? And just the way you describe that, that's the way somebody who's done some hallucinogens or like smoked some weed in their life would describe it.
I
It's
smoked
like,
some weed
let's zone
5
out.
minutes before I said that.
Well, but that's the way you would describe it. It's like, well, let's zoom out and just like look at this from a different angle. Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Right.
You know? Because that's what hallucinogens let you do. They kind of like you rise above your own little preconceptions and
Pretty
your
good lines.
things, and you focus on what's really going on here. But then, like, the downside to that is that also allows
Stop it!
for, like,
Stop it!
Because you're not worried about your own little dumb life.
It's so
anymore.
stupid, guys.
You're worried about like the bigger picture and things. But sometimes people need to be
It's so
worried
dumb,
about their
guys.
own life.
Yeah.
And they actually need to be worried about like how are you going to make rent this month or how are you going to do this month. And I see that with young guys sometimes where it's like,
But
no, you
that's-
are smoking way too much pot.
Yeah, that's where personal responsibility comes into play.
Yeah.
My
Like, it's
description
so
of pot
dumb.
was like it's like a tool, like any other tool, like a hammer. You could build a house with it, or you could hit yourself in the dick if you're fucking crazy.
I think that's right.
And that's what the way I think about marijuana. Like I think you have to have some structure and you have to have some discipline in your life to get anything done. Now, if you don't have those things and then you also really enjoy getting high, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's-
that's a bad combination.
The problem is not getting high. The problem is your behavior patterns lack structure and discipline. If you knew the things you had to do and you went out and did them and you pursued them because they were the most important things, whether it's finding meaningful work, whether it's whatever you're trying to do in your life, focus on that primarily because that's what's going to get you ahead in life.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, that's the problem. And if you're smoking pot at the same time you're not doing that, it's not the pot's fault. It's your fault.
Yeah,
It's
I
your
completely agree. And anyway, none of that is a justification for any of it being illegal.
None of it
it's
is
insane.
just- and too many people find benefit in it. It's too beneficial, medically, like psychologically. It's too beneficial.
But even the stuff that you could argue is not beneficial should also all
it's
be
like
legal.
cocaine.
It should all be legal.
Cocaine.
Because
if
look,
cocaine was legal, we would have so much less death in this country.
dude,
so much less death.
We got 100,000 ODs a year in this country right now.
Number
and
one
we
cause
still,
of death for people 18 to 49 is overdose.
The life expectancy is going down because of the overdose epidemic, and we still can't just work up the will to just be like, give it up, just call it quits on this war on drugs. That they're dying because they're getting fentanyl on the black market, and they have no idea what the dosage is of it. And people are going out and getting what they're told is heroin, and they're told is cocaine, and has all types of other shit in it. They can't get these opioids anymore, so now they have to go and try to get them from drug dealers. You got people dying in the drug trade, the smuggling coming in from Mexico, and that all goes away if you just legalize it. I'm not saying everything's perfect. I'm not saying, and when I say all of it, I mean, I don't mean like that nobody will ever abuse drugs if they're legal. I'm just saying that the smuggling is completely over, and then the overdose numbers will like drastically be reduced because at least people will know what they're getting and know they're getting clean stuff and like know they're getting the right dosage and stuff like that. It's just like, it's insane. Like, it's such an emergency right now in America. And, like, no one is really well.
Like,
and then
what?
these people, even Trump, fucking idiot he is the other day. He goes, oh, what we need is the death penalty for drug dealers. You're like, that's it. By the way, President Operation Warp Speed is concerned with drug dealers. Like, you know, but it's like, yeah, that's the problem. We haven't had harsh enough punishments for drugs. We haven't tried that yet.
It might even be 31, but it's so
Well,
terrible.
it has to be regulated and it has to be legal. Because if it's not, you're going to get unregulated, illegal drugs, and you're going to prop up criminal organizations that are extremely violent that could just walk across the border. That's what's happening. And all this talk about the border not being important, then why do we have it? What are you saying?
Yeah.
Like, is this a real issue that thousands of people are coming across every day? That seems like it's an issue.
Of course it is.
The thing what they did when they shipped them off to Martha's Vineyard,
Pretty funny.
come on.
I mean, it's fucked up, but it's pretty
fucked
funny.
up and funny, and the response was fucked up and funny.
Yeah, it was.
Immediate. They immediately took, we don't have room for these people. They just immediately, 50 people.
All of a sudden, they start sounding like everything that they called racist right away, you know? Like, it's just kind of like, you know, like, well, this is a big issue, and it's a strain on our resources, and they have to go somewhere else, but we're still the good guys, and we love them. But we simply, at Martha's Vineyard, cannot accommodate 50 people.
50.
Dude, there's 2 million coming in this
Migrants
year.
just came across the border.
I mean, and you know,
2 million.
yeah.
2 million people have snuck across the border this year.
Yeah.
Is that the number?
Well, it's
It's the worst level. It's the worst level of all time.
Did you see that hilarious interview where Kamala Harris is
The border is secure.
Yeah. You know what she's like at this point? Do you know how there's those comics that are like really good comics, but they have a girlfriend, and the girlfriend does comedy too, but she bombs every time. And like, you know, maybe takes her off the road for a little bit, tells her she's got to tighten it up, and then next thing you know, like, who's opening up for Jeff? Oh, he brought his girlfriend. Oh no, he's gonna give her another chance. Like, they trot her out every now and then. They're like, give her one more chance. Let her talk. And it's always chaos. It's like now she's so trigger burnt. Like she's like, you could tell that she's shell shocked.
Yeah, it seems like she's gotten much worse.
Yes, she's
like I
much
almost
worse.
feel like she's
Terrified.
like, are you like, is this a caricature of what the worst thing to say would be?
She can't help it. It's like she's freezing, right? And she like, if you caught her in like earlier campaign speeches and when she's like comfortable and having conversations with people, she doesn't seem inarticulate. She seems pretty smooth. She was a lawyer, right?
Yes.
So like, she obviously she's not dumb.
She was a
so
lawyer,
what
and
happens?
then yeah, right.
It's the world watching. The world, it's time, and we got to take care of time, and it's most important when
Where's it?
time
And if-
passes.
And if we do it together, then we will move on as
Together.
a community.
Yeah.
Together, as one, in a sense of community. Together. And you're like, what is happening here?
She's like,
It's like, what are these Democrats gonna do, man? Like, can Joe Biden actually run for re-election? And if he doesn't, can they actually put up her? Like, you know there are like Democrat like big donors somewhere. Like, you're like, okay, here's the end goal. We get Biden and Kamala Harris out of the way. Go back from there. What does the day before that happens look like? Because we got to get them out of the way and get somebody else in here.
right.
Because I mean, Biden, like,
But how do you do that? How do you get them both out? If I was Kamala Harris, I would be taking no small planes.
yeah, that's right. Well, I don't think it seems like Biden is not backing off of he wants to run.
To visit the DMZ after North Korea tests a missile. What?
Oh, that's where they're sending her.
They're sending her to the DMZ. They just sent Nancy Pelosi up there too. They're like, let's get. Hey, we're talking. You never know. They might do it for us.
Well, the crazy thing was her going to when she went to Taiwan.
Yeah. bag of diamonds.
You
They
see
told
this,
us.
Joe Biden, how insane this is? This has happened like so many times where he'll just say something, and he says literally the most insane thing in the world. Like, he just came out and changed the one China policy,
Yeah.
which is the most reckless thing. It's right up there with the stuff that he's doing with Ukraine and Russia. You go, dude, you can't just say that the policy is to overthrow Vladimir Putin, dude. That's like a huge thing to say. And then they come out and they go, the White House issued a statement that their policy has not changed. And you're like, who's the White House?
And what's
Who?
this president?
Is it the chief of staff?
Right, who's
Is it the
saying
vice
that?
president? Is it his wife? Who's the White House? He's the head of the White House. So he comes out the other day and just says, and the whole point, the whole point of the one China policy is basically, and this is actually one thing that was smart strategic U.S. foreign policy, is that they basically went, okay, so we recognize China. Okay, this is your area, China. But, we also like Taiwan. And we'd also like to see a reunification, and we'd kind of like it to all be peaceful. And we're very ambiguous about where we stand. Because the problem is, if you were to come out and say what Joe Biden just said the other day, he goes, oh, if China invaded Taiwan, we would send in the military. Well, the problem with that is, like, that might be the encouragement Taiwan needs to go, okay, then we declare
Oh,
independence.
come on, man.
And if they declare independence, China will invade Taiwan. And then, holy shit! And by the way, all of our Navy war games say that we lose that war.
Look at this. China sparks new Taiwan invasion fears with threat to crush anyone who tries to stop its reunification with the self-governing island after Biden kowtowed to Beijing at UN. That's why having a guy like him in office is fucking dangerous.
And this is what they said about Trump.
But that's legitimately dangerous, man. And I got a lot of shit about this when I had Eric Weinstein on. I was like, I can't vote for Biden. Like, I'd vote for Trump before I'd vote for Biden. And the reason being is so, you knew this. You knew he was deteriorating. Forget about his policies when he was lucid.
Yeah.
Forget about, he was lucid during the Obama administration. You barely heard from him.
Yeah, he was much, much better. If you listen to a speech he gave in 2012 or 2013, he has lost several steps.
See, regardless of what you think about his policies, as a human that's in a position of extreme stress and power, that is nuts. That's nuts. That's nuts.
It's really unbelievable.
Like, what? Like, you fuckers.
And
You
so
piece of
far
fucking
gone.
shit.
And I mean, look, this was the knock on Donald Trump is well, he'll say reckless things. But I mean, what is more reckless than just and the crazy thing about it, even Henry Kissinger came out recently and was talking about how insane this whole Ukraine policy is. Because he's like, well, what do you do? Is the plan here that we're going to provoke Russia and China? We're going to provoke nuclear conflict with the two countries who you just don't want to have a nuclear conflict with. And whatever anyone says, and I know there's some some of the kind of populist right-winger types who are real China hawks, who are really concerned about China. But the truth is that neither one of these countries pose a military threat to America.
It's so fucking dumb.
There's just no way. There's no way that they pose a military threat to us. Does China pose a military threat to Taiwan? Perhaps you could argue that. Although the peace has been kept for many decades now, but perhaps you can argue they pose a threat to them. But they don't pose a threat to us. And the idea that we're trying to find, it's just so bananas that you go, okay, so we have 20 years of the war on terrorism, which is basically at this point, almost nobody even argues that it was anything short of a disaster. I mean, I saw Bill Kristol debate.
God damn it, I'm gonna punch this fucking wall. I'm gonna punch the wall.
At antiwar.com.
You do it.
And he debated him in New York City. And one of the people in the crowd asked a question of Bill Kristol, neocon #1 guy. And he goes, what was the last U.S. Intervention that was successful? And I think he said, I can't remember if he said, he ever said Kosovo or something like that, maybe Bosnia, I can't remember which one he said. But even he didn't try to defend any of the interventions of the 21st century. He didn't even try to say, he couldn't even look this kid who asked him the question, look him in the eye and go, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, Pakistan. No, he couldn't. He couldn't even tell him. So we have 20 years of just disastrous wars, at least a couple million innocent people dead. Not to mention, I don't know, what, 50,000 of our soldiers who have blown their brains out after they came back from these wars, a few thousand who died in the battles, and trillions of dollars wasted, nothing to show for it.
Like,
And
what?
finally,
It's so stupid.
we end the longest one, the
Like,
war
it's
in
so dumb.
Afghanistan, and we're finally kind of moving toward like, okay, we kind of recognize this is wrong. So let's start provoking a war with Russia. And how about China too? What the? It's like what you were talking about at the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union. And then you're like, oh good, we don't have to be at war no more. And you're like, Saddam Hussein, we got to go fight this guy now. We're just always trying to find the next war. And I'll tell you, this is potentially even stupider than that. Because the Biden guys, they're talking about Putin like he's Saddam Hussein. Like he's Muammar Gaddafi. Like we could just tell him what to do and he has to fucking do it. But he doesn't, because he's sitting on the biggest nuclear arsenal in the history of the world, second only to ours.
I think his is first.
Actually might be first. Yes, actually might be
Yeah, I
first.
thought ours was the biggest. But
Yes, yeah, I think you're right
Russia's.
about that.
But it's like, it's kind of a moot point because
We can all destroy the world many times.
many
over.
times
Yes.
over.
I hate this fucking
But like
game.
they're talking about
I hate this fucking level.
Yeah.
That apparently he has.
That's what he said.
Like, this is...
Didn't he engage one in Syria? Didn't they try one?
Yeah, I
Somewhere.
read that. I don't
Not
know
in
if
Syria. No,
I-
no, it was in Ukraine. It was recent.
I don't know about this. I read about this, but I haven't verified if that was confirmed that it's actually true. But I know that basically this was his big thing in response to George W. Bush putting the dual rocket launchers in Poland. Is that he was like, well, now our entire effort is to improve our military capability because you can hit us quicker, so now we have to be able to hit you quicker. And it's just been like this brinksmanship for so long. It's just so stupid.
We have these really narrow narratives that we're fed in this country, and this is one of the things that I love most about this conversation is because all these things that you've laid out and all of these things that most people are not aware of about the history of this conflict. Like now people get an understanding of how this is a pattern that just is going, this is what Eisenhower warned about. This is a pattern that exists and is going to exist in this current form if we keep supporting it.
Yeah, no, that's it. And just that it's not and it's not that there's and then I get people who try to almost kind of counter with the simple opposite narrative. It's like, well, you're supporting this, or we have to support the freedom of these people and stuff. But I really think what has to break in America is this empire mentality. This mentality that even if something is bad is happening around the world, well then we must go and stop it. And you're like, I heard people talking about this with the protests going on in Iran right now. We have to support these people who want freedom. And you're like, dude, this country was just locked down for a year and a half. We were in lockdowns. Maybe we're not in the position to start exporting freedom around the world. Why don't we start at home? Let's try to make this a free country. Let's work toward that. And, paradoxically, every time we go to expand freedom around the world, we get
Might be
less and less
31.
freedom here. And then we don't end up giving any freedom there. It's like, we gotta
34,
go
wow.
bring
Have we ever
freedom.
brought freedom
Bad
anymore? It's,
third
like,
cam.
super successful.
I mean, you could argue that in post-World War II, Japan and Germany, but, by the way, that also came with the price tag
What? How did I not hit?
slaughtering their civilian population. It's not as if that just went easy. But, then if you look at the war on terrorism, I mean, we went to spread freedom to the Middle East, but that comes with the price tag of the Patriot Act and the Department of Homeland Security and, all of this stuff. And then, by the way, we didn't bring any freedom there either. So,
And I think
whoopsie.
that what we were saying earlier about
It's fine. It's
the way the
fine.
internet has kind of changed the way people view governments and people view information and people have access. We're more informed, maybe more confused in a lot of ways than ever before. But
Maybe.
I think when that happens,
Oh my god, this is like
we're
29
fucked
pace.
for a while because there's going to be mad chaos where people try to make sense of people's real thoughts and real
Oh,
intentions and
the
real
Warp 29?
mind
Come on, 29.
runs the world. All of our money.
Ah,
the
not bad.
mindsets of people that are just trying to
pretty good
acquire money.
PB.
I would say-
We're gonna play a
I would
little
say
bit
it's
more.
just the
Damn it, I thought that was
pursuit of
faster.
only numbers. That's it. The constant pursuit of numbers and objects.
Thank you, Dick.
there's
Thank
also,
you, Baron. Thank you, everybody else.
There's this thing where there's the pursuit
then why
of
dust?
money
Everybody's
is almost
thinking.
I break it up into two categories where there's a lot of people pursuing money, but a lot of people are pursuing money.
Man,
like
it's
private
fucking hard. It's a
citizens,
hard level.
in the marketplace, or even if they're
Damn
really
it.
trying to pursue money, basically the only way they can get it is by offering a product. to
Right.
people and see if they want it.
Right.
It's like, if you want this, if you're willing to buy this, then I can make money off of that. But you only buy it if you think like, well, I would like to have that. I value that. And then there are these people who are connected to the government who are basically in rigged games, where they've stacked the deck against regular people, where you essentially have to give them money. You don't have a choice. And so like and those people are just like, that's a win-lose relationship, not like a win-win relationship. You know what I mean? And I really think the only hope, like I've said this to you before, but I think the only hope for America is some form of liberty, some form of libertarianism. Like, we've just gone way too much in the other direction of like the government having way too much power and running everybody's lives. And the only way to save this thing, to cool off the culture war, to stop drowning the next generation in debt and destroying our currency and all of this stuff, is to just like, there's got to be some form of like decentralization, limiting of the power of government, rolling back some of these institutions, and the only way to do that is to get enough people to demand it, and then enough powerful people to support that. You know, like get enough like powerful people like on board with this, and enough popular support to just like be like, okay, there's real will of the
Problem is,
people.
once the game is rigged, it's hard to get people to go back to normal.
It is.
They've had a rigged game for a
Like,
long
what is
time.
this? What is
To
this?
open it up to an ethical, logical, reasonable playing field at this point in the game, where it's like really locked down. And
Well,
the-
you mean
the
like so
numbers they
from
can
the
extract.
so you're saying like for those special interests who have this game rigged, right? So like I think what it's almost got to be is some combination of like where there's enough of the people who are so angry and are just demanding their freedom, and that this rigged game be rolled back, and then it's almost kind of like they're like, look, you got away with this for a long time, but you're going to meet something, like you're going to meet a very bad fate if you continue on this path.
Threats.
Well, I don't want there to be violence. You'd much rather be like, hey, look, take this deal. Cut your losses now. Like, you did this. You got away with it for a long time. Go away. Stop doing it. Because look how angry you're going to make these people if you continue ripping them off. But you always want a peaceful solution to all of this stuff. But there's got to be, you know, like, look, I'll say the thing that to me is like the silver lining, the note of optimism, is that there really is something important about people waking up. There's a reason why they work so hard to propagandize people. There's a reason why they flipped out on you so much for having just like Dr. Malone and people like that on your show. They're really concerned about that. They're really concerned that you might talk to people and that they might hear from this expert and they might believe him. It's like, why are they so concerned about that? Because if they knew that, they may not support these policies.
Insane.
And if they don't support these
Insane.
policies, they may not be able
Come
to
on,
get away
baby.
with them. That's ultimately why the COVID
on.
passports failed. Just because enough people were outraged about it. They didn't even give this a lot of coverage. There were huge protests in New York City over this stuff. And then it was just like people weren't doing it. They
Like,
weren't
really?
following the rules.
Yeah,
and stuff.
really gonna
Eventually they
fuck
just
me
walked
like
back.
that? Like, this level.
There's like real
Like,
power
it's just
in
what?
waking people up. And so that's I think there's at least a hope for the country now that it's like people don't trust these institutions that they shouldn't trust because they're just lying to them. And there's platforms like yours, you know what I mean, that are bigger than any of those platforms where people can hear the truth. So I'm optimistic at least for that, as long as we stop provoking Putin and we don't fight a nuclear war.
Yeah, all the above. And I think there's just, the problem is that people who talk like you don't become governors. They don't become senators. Maybe senators, maybe. But they generally no and don't become president.
Yeah.
You know, you have to play the game. And what do you think it's like
Well, now-
if you get into office? What kind of fucking horrible shit are they going to write about you?
I don't know. There's too many people in the Libertarian Party who want me to try to find out. But
Don't
that's
do it. Don't do it, Dave Smith. I say that as your friend, but if I wasn't your friend, I'd be like, fuck yeah, that guy should do it.
Well, what if I just run, but I don't win?
That's not
okay.
good enough. That's not good enough.
But see, it could help in the effort to wake a whole lot of people up.
Maybe it'll confirm people's suspicions that no matter how good a candidate is, if they're not one of the two candidates, one of the two parties, they're not going to support him because it's a wasted vote.
Yeah, but
There's
even that,
narrative.
but even that would be like an interesting thing to like let people know. You know what I mean? Like it'd still be an interesting thing to at least point out to people. It's like, yeah, but that's the essence of the problem.
And then the crackpots would say that you're taking away votes that could have gone to my party whatever it is, right or
you're-
left.
yes,
and you're
correct.
the reason why we lost. You piece of shit. You fucking coward. You unpatriotic traitor. You treasonous. This, that, or the other thing.
Yeah, you would.
know?
You do get that, but I also just kind of think I go, and this is why I'm a member of the Libertarian Party, and this is why like I joined it. I'm excited about it because my camp kind of just took over the whole party. Basically, there was like a little like civil war in the Libertarian Party between like the Gary
Of course
Johnson.
there was.
Well, there's the Gary Johnson people and the Ron Paul people, and I'm like the Ron Paul people's guy, and we won. We took over like every.
Like, it's so fucking dumb.
But my thing about like why a third party is just that at a certain point you're like, look, there's an argument to this. Like, okay, if there's a lesser of two evil, well, then the third party might help the more evil of two evil get in or something like that. But at a certain point you're just like, this is the United States of America still, kind of, or at least it's supposed to be. And both of these two major political parties have just committed treason against the American people. Like absolute treason. Just raped this country and destroyed everything it was supposed to be about. And we're better than that. And we should at a certain point just go, no, you know what? We won't support either of you guys anymore. Because like, fuck you guys. You don't deserve our support. There's somebody else should get it. And then hey, there's this party over here that just stands for what? Liberty. Like how about the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights? That's a good place to start. That's what we were supposed to be about anyway. So let's just go with those guys.
How about this? How about we just take that clip and we put it out there, and that's the announcement that you're running.
No, I
That's all
can't-
you do.
No, I can't make the announcement that I'm running.
No, that's all you do. Just put that out. That's it. No campaigning.
Nothing else.
Nothing else.
Okay, but then I also have to tell people, go to lp.org/join, because you got to join the party, because that would actually like send a lot of.
And don't watch Legion of Skanks, because that alone would be a.
Now let me tell you something, okay? Now let me just. I just want to mention something. The corporate press probably is going to bring up Legion of Skanks. Now, when you hear of Legion of Skanks, I just want you to know they can do anything with video these days. They can make it sound like you're saying anything. I don't know who that guy is.
Come
I've never
on.
met Jay Okerson or Louis
Might
J.
be
Gomez in
31
my
again.
life.
31
I don't know
dude.
these people. They
33.
don't seem like good people. I'll tell you that. They're funny.
I'm gonna do one
They're
more
pretty funny. They
completion
say
and then
some
I'm gonna
funny
call it a
stuff.
night,
But,
maybe.
yeah.
That's the problem, is that you and I are both connected to the world of stand-up comedy. We're both
But it's not. I don't know, man.
No. I'm not. I don't think it's a problem. I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm saying that's the problem with like having great ideas like you do. That you're also connected to blowjob jokes and people. Like
Those are the
Ari-
clean ones.
Ari taking a shit in Tupperware and bringing it onto the stage.
We were not on board with that joke, for the record. None of us approved of that at all. God damn it, what's wrong with that guy?
He's the best.
He really is.
He's the best.
And the worst.
He's the worst too, but he's the best. But yeah, it's like you could just take that clip of you explaining what it means to be a libertarian and what you stand for, and just put it out there. It goes viral. No more campaigning.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the plan.
Okay.
That's what it is.
So you run
That's all.
for 2024, or do you wait for nuclear war and you could be our Mad Max?
And then it was like the rebuilding process. Well, I
You could be
gotta.
a part of the rebuilding.
I really got to
process.
get on building a bunker or something if I'm
You
gonna
gotta
make
get
it
out here,
past
son.
the.
Get out here.
What?
Plenty of deer, lots of land.
That's true.
This is where you want to be when shit goes down.
Yeah, but I
Lots
mean,
of bullets.
yeah, but I really think you're gonna need like, if it's nuclear war, you're gonna need more than just land and deer. You're gonna need some type of like bunker.
You're probably not going to live if you need that.
Yeah.
You
Then
know,
it's
you
over.
have to think about like what kind of nuclear war are we talking about? Are we talking about just like Los Angeles and New York get evaporated, or are we talking about every major city in the country? If it's every major
Then it's
city in the
over.
country, then it's over.
Yeah.
And then anyone who lives, you know, the lawlessness that you see in horrible YouTube videos and on TikTok or whatever, that will pale in comparison to living in a post-apocalyptic world with no power.
Yeah.
If there's no power, shit will get so primal so quick, and you will also realize how few bullets there really are.
Not enough.
There's not enough bullets. You need to understand, like, if you're like hunting every day and trying to find food and you're protecting yourself from gangs of outlaws that are trying to steal your livestock and your family members, like, this is the kind of world we're talking about.
Well,
We're talking about like Walking Dead, like real Walking Dead shit, where people behave like monsters.
It's interesting, like how fragile civilization is, and how easy it is for us to just be so removed from that. You know what I mean? Like, and that's all. Like, and by the way, I don't think we're gonna go to nuclear war. I don't mean to be like alarmist on that, but I'm just saying, like, it's so dangerous to play this game. And if we had like sensible adults in charge of anything, everyone would be together. Unlike the obvious number one priority here is like everybody get in the room and make sure we don't go to this. You know what I mean? It's that freaking China the other day at the UN. This is how pathetic it is that we let China, who's, you know, this like one-party fascist dictatorship, you know, like kind of right-wing communists. Like now they're like communists but who believe in business or something like that. We let them at the UN. Biden's up there and he's like, Putin must surrender, and this is everybody should be on the side of Ukraine against Putin, blah blah blah. And then China, they get up there and they go, we call on all parties to de-escalate. And you're like, did you just let them be the adults in the room? Did we literally just let this one-party authoritarian dictatorship come up there and sound like the reasonable ones? We ceded that ground to them? That we can't even just say, like, no, actually, everybody should be trying to take the temperature down here.
You know, another thing that Roger Waters said that stumped that CNN guy? He said, China doesn't invade anybody. Like, China hasn't invaded anybody in 100 years.
Well, this is what China.
Right?
Yes,
China
something like that. Yeah. No,
countries?
China does. They've never been an expansionist, but at least for 100 years they haven't been. And you know, the funny thing is like how China is gaining. Look, there's no question, right? Over the last 20 years, let's say, American influence in the world has gone down, and China's has gone up. But the way China's been doing it is by doing business with the world, while we're fighting wars with the world. So what's the lesson there? Stop fighting stupid wars. Do business with people. Trade with people.
Well,
have good relations. Yeah, they're doing some shady business, for sure.
Shit. They're doing some shit that we were criticized for doing, right? Like offering loans, going into places, making sure that they can't pay the loans, taking over territory,
that's for sure.
Resources.
That's for sure. But certainly, I don't think there's any. It's smarter than going in and just spending $1 trillion to kill a few 100,000 people
right, it's
for
like,
no
why
reason.
is one morally and ethically superior, and why is that one war? I mean, think about the two different business models that you're talking about. That ours is morally and ethically superior because we have free speech. Is that what it is? Because we have abortion? Because we have all these things that we want over here, so we're okay with doing what we do in other countries? And that's where it gets squirrely, because like if you say what China's doing is scary and dangerous and awful, like yeah, so's what we do, right?
Well, right. It kind of all depends on what side of it you're looking at it from. Like, if you're like an Iraqi citizen, then yeah, what we did is pretty scary and awful and horrible. And you know, it's also just, it's been so damaging that it's like George W. Bush and Barack Obama too, you know, they fought the war on terrorism under the banner of like, this is freedom and democracy.
Right.
And then it's kind of like, oh, why aren't other people like getting on board with freedom and democracy? It's like, I don't know, because this is how you defined it, as dropping hellfire missiles on weddings. Like, if that's freedom and democracy, who wants that? And so it's the damage is like, you know, like all these other things. It's
That's
kind of
another
immeasurable.
one. Imagine if that was going on in this country. Imagine if there was drones that were targeting people that, you know, the Iraqis wanted dead or the Iranians wanted dead, and they were killing 90% civilians. 90% regular people that were just going about their day, but unfortunately were grouped up with a person who had metadata on them.
Yeah, and that's, by the way, that even that 90% number is like, that was just who wasn't the person on the target list.
Yeah.
But even of the people on the target list, they get that wrong sometimes and just had the wrong person on the target list.
yeah, all the
so the
time.
actual number is even of like people who weren't actual terrorists is even higher than that. And like, yeah, imagine like there was just, right, like a campaign in, you know, Chicago to do that.
Right.
They're just blowing up buildings, you know, because, well, we suspect someone that's a suspected bad guy is in that building, so we blew it up. Turns out it was just kids. It was just a daycare. And then the people who did that, and then they don't even like lose their jobs.
No.
Or the people who supported that don't even lose their job. They just go like, yeah, I now agree it was a mistake. Anyway, here's why we got to do this.
It was a mistake?
Most of them at least acknowledge that Iraq was a mistake.
Right, but they're not saying that the drone attacks.
No, that's true. That's
they
fair.
make mistakes, but the drone program.
I don't
It's
know.
still going on.
I'm gonna play
Biden
just for like
dropped a
5
bunch
more
of drone
minutes,
bombs.
maybe.
I mean, Trump did a ton of them too. They're kind of known.
But are they doing it, or is it happening with their authorization? Is it happening whether or not they know about it? Like, how much involvement does Biden have in day-to-day drone operations?
I mean, it's how much involvement does Biden have in anything
Right,
that's
but
happening in the
but what
material
you're saying
world?
is Biden did it, right?
Yes,
So-
I said under the Biden administration. So technically under his authority, and at least by what the rule of law says, he could stop it.
Right, but in your opinion, how much influence does he have on that?
My guess is he is. There's just other people in charge.
Do you think
of
they
it.
even assess him?
I think quite possibly it's possible they do, because Biden was, like Biden is somebody who would probably approve of these things, even if they did run it by him. But I know with Donald Trump, like they bragged in certain areas where they lied to him about the number of troops that were in different regions. Like there are all
They
types
lied
of
to him?
Yeah, they lied to him about the number of troops that were in Syria, and they bragged about it. There's articles on this.
Who's
they
that?
misled him. It was somebody at the Defense Department. I don't know, Jimmy, you could pull that up, but it was that, or someone at the Pentagon. But they were basically like they misled him about the number of troops that were actually there, because he was saying he wanted to pull all of them out. And they were like, so it's just, and the fact that there's even articles written about this, and you're like, wait a minute, that's the commander-in-chief. However you feel about him, that was supposed to be the commander-in-chief.
Outgoing Syria envoy admits hiding U.S. troop numbers, praises Trump's Mideast record. We were always playing shell games, says AMB, is that Ambassador Jim Jeffrey, who also gives advice to President-elect Biden. So he still gives advice to Biden while he admits to playing
Don't want to play
shell
this anymore.
with information. We were
Thank you
always
for
playing
being here.
shell games to not make clear to our leadership how many troops we had here. There, Jeffrey said in an interview. The actual number of troops in northeast Syria is a lot more than the roughly 200 troops Trump initially agreed to leave there in 2019. Trump's abruptly announced withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria remains perhaps the single most controversial foreign policy move during his first years in office. And for Jeffrey, the most controversial thing in my 50 years in government. The order, first handed down in December of 2018, led to the resignation of former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. It catapulted Jeffrey, then Trump's special envoy for Syria, into the role of special envoy in the counter-ISIS fight when it sparked the protest resignation of his predecessor, Brett McGurk. Okay.
So
So
basically,
it's basically what they're saying is that this one guy stepped down because he was upset at Trump, and then the next guy just lied.
So Mad Dog Mattis,
Right.
who was Trump's first defense secretary, which is so bizarre, it's such a Donald Trump thing too, is that Donald Trump was running on ending the war in Syria. Like he ran on that in 2016. And then he picks this guy, Mattis, as his defense secretary. And then when he tries to end the war in Syria, Mattis resigns over it. He's like, I will not do this. I'll resign before I carry out these orders. And you're like, did you guys never have a conversation about this? Like, when you were running on ending this war, and then you picked a guy to be your defense secretary, did you never, like, talk to him about, like, hey, by the way, I mean it? Like, I actually want to end this war? So he resigns. Trump's, like, whatever, I'm still pulling out of the war. And then the next guy who comes in and moves up the ranks just starts lying to him about how many troops there are there. And by the way, the story at the end of this is that Trump just backs down. And just doesn't end the war. Which is basically what Trump did on everything.
Mattis is a scary dude.
Yeah, I think that's why Trump picked him.
You ever hear Mattis talk about whether or not he sleeps well at night?
No, I don't think I've heard
Listen,
that clip.
find that clip. I don't even want to butcher it. Someone questions Mattis whether or not he sleeps well at night, knowing that the enemy's out there. Yeah, this is the type of guy you want to be a general.
Well, I think this is probably the type of reason why Trump picked him.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's badass.
Listen to this shit. Hold on a second.
Keeps you awake at night.
Nothing. I keep other people awake at night.
Keeps you awake at night.
I do remember that.
Nothing. I keep other people awake at night.
Yeah.
An instant answer.
Yeah.
What
But
keeps you
look, I
awake
mean,
at
I
night?
think you
Nothing.
want badass guys like that who are also like wise enough to recognize like what's strategically in America's
Right.
interest and what's there.
Right.
And you know, Donald Trump did get the guy in, and the guy is Colonel Douglas McGregor, who's like this. You know, he's like one of those real badass dudes, but who is wise enough to completely like turn against American foreign policy in the Middle East early on. I think he got out in like 2005, 2006 or something like that. And he was like, and he's basically just been speaking out against it sooner. He was like, this is not in our national interest to be doing this. And we're doing nothing but bankrupting our country and putting ourselves in a more dangerous situation and all of this stuff. And Trump hired him and he made him the top advisor at the Defense Department after he lost the election to Joe Biden. So he had him there in the lame duck period after Biden was there, and they tried to work out a deal. In fact, I think Trump signed off on the order to immediately withdraw from
Whatever,
Syria
just
and
whatever.
Afghanistan
It's so
and,
stupid.
I think one other theater, and then a couple days later,
what?
Trump rescinded the order. Someone else got to him and convinced him not to.
Yeah, imagine the first day in office conversation.
Okay, 8 more minutes and then I'm gonna stop playing.
Other than that, imagine
Oh my gosh.
showing you an angle of the JFK assassination you've never seen before.
Yeah, right. Which maybe that's it. I don't know.
But what the fuck do you think they tell you? Because you don't know jack shit while you're running, right? I mean, they don't assess you with nothing. I guarantee.
No,
because
I
you
mean-
could lose, and then you'd have all this information.
Well, supposedly you're getting some of these intelligence briefs, after you're president-elect.
but not before.
But I think it also doesn't even have to be as dramatic as the other angle of JFK getting shot. I mean, what Donald Trump ran on in 2016, and just for the record, I don't really never know with Donald Trump how committed to any of this shit he was, because the only thing that I've ever seen Donald Trump truly be committed to is his own greatness and his own image. Yeah, his own I'm the winner, you're the loser. That's what he seems to really be motivated by. But he said in the 2016 campaign, he goes, wouldn't it make sense if we were just friendly with Russia and we worked together, since they were fighting ISIS in Syria? He goes, we also want to fight ISIS. Let's work together, fight ISIS, and then leave the Middle East and not worry about regime change wars in the Middle East, and we could be friendly with Russia. We could make a deal with them and get along with them. There's no reason why we shouldn't. And that's what he kind of ran on. And then, just all day long, everyone in the media, in the entire corporate press, all they were saying is Trump-Russia collusion. Trump's in a conspiracy with Russia. So now it's like, go try to make a deal with Russia. How can you? How could you make a deal with Russia when all day long everyone's saying you're involved in a conspiracy with Russia, and then you come out and go, I just made a deal with the Russians? They'd be like, proof. There's a conspiracy with Russia. So they deliberately boxed him in to be like, so now he had to prove how much he wasn't in bed with Russia. You know what I mean? And he did this in a bunch of things, like he tore up the INF treaty, the intermediate missile treaty. Here's how much I'm not in bed with Russia. I'll tear up a nuclear treaty. And you're like, wait, what? That's an insane thing to do. Or tell you, he pulled out of the treaty, however you want to call it. He's like, by the way, it'd be really good to be in that treaty right now. And then he ended up, same thing with Ukraine. He bailed, he caved, and he sent in the weapons. It's like, so they have all these techniques. And a lot of that shit happened to Obama, too. Like that whole thing when General McChrystal went on the news and said, spoke directly to the press and was like, we need all of these troops here in Afghanistan, and I haven't even had a conversation with the president. And then it was like, oh, all the Republicans get on him like, but he's not even talking to the generals on the ground, and they need all these troops. And then Obama's like, fuck, I guess I gotta send all these troops in. So they have ways of just putting political pressure on guys where, you know what I mean? They don't even really necessarily have to threaten them. But then also, by the way, I don't know, they also might be threatening them.
Could you imagine that day? That first day in office. You're like, what did I do? Why did I do this? You probably think immediately, like, oh, I probably shouldn't do this.
I might never play this level again.
When guys are fighting,
I'm just joking.
the day of the fight.
I probably will, but not for a long time, I don't think.
I don't know. I don't even want to do this anymore. They say that the day of the fight, and then they go in there and they win. They feel good.
Yeah.
Or they lose and I was right. But that feeling of what the fuck did I do?
Shit, I'm
what
here.
What the fuck did I do?
And there's no getting out of it now.
And the stress of the whole world. The whole world. I mean, Biden's probably pretty removed from it because he seems kind of out of it. And also he seems like he's got a very strong ego. Very strong belief in himself in some weird way.
I mean, I think Biden, I don't know. With Obama, it aged him so much. With Bush, it aged him so much. Trump, not so much. Although it was only 4 years. Because I think Trump's ego actually, I remember one time, Bill O'Reilly was interviewing Donald Trump. I always thought this was an interesting insight into who Donald Trump is. But Bill O'Reilly asked him this question, and he was kind of like, he was like, do you ever just like, walk around at the White House and you're just like, wow, this is just unbelievable that I'm at the White House. Like, I'm the president of the United States and I'm in the White House. And Trump goes, yeah, it's a nice house. Like, it was just such a it was like, yeah, I don't know, this is right about where I should be. Like, my house is a nice house, this house is a nice house, whatever.
You know
It's
how
all
many
nice stuff.
years he was watching the machine? You know
Trump?
how many years? Yeah.
Yeah, he
how
was,
many years
he was
he was
watching for a long
involved?
time.
When he talked about how he had to donate money to Hillary Clinton for her to show up at his wedding,
Yeah.
like that kind of shit.
Yeah, no, he was rubbing elbows with all of those like elite people,
He was watching the machine forever. It wasn't until he talked shit about Obama being from Kenya. That's what's like set the whole buffoonery into motion, right? Because then like people are mocking him, and Obama mocked him. Remember?
I hate this
He did the
fucking
White
level.
House press
I hate this
correspondence
fucking
dinner,
level so
and he
much.
said, here's one thing that I am that you'll never be, president of the United States. You see Trump in the audience.
I mean, he made fun
You're
of
taunting a psycho.
Yeah.
You're taunting a psycho.
Yeah, he taunted him, and Trump was the one thing that Trump is truly a genius at is like he's like a genius level self-marketer.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and it's all like instinctual, like he's
All right,
like,
2 more
he's
minutes
not
and I'm
like,
gonna
intellectualizes
call it a
He
night.
just
We
kinda,
go to
like,
31.
He knows
Not
how
very
to
good,
make himself
but
the center of the story. He knows how to like say the thing that will get the reaction out of
Progress.
people, and that turned out to be an incredibly useful skill in campaigning.
Oh, yeah.
Like he applied that to campaigning, and then it just took off. And he also, he tapped into something. Even with the birth certificate stuff with Obama, which I think is all goofy, But he tapped into like the level of distrust that people.
fine.
Had
It's not ideal, but it's fine.
They knew how much everyone was lying to them, that they were even willing to.
I got so
entertain
lucky
this
that guy
rumor
ran
that
away.
I could have been told to them. Maybe this whole thing's a fucking lie, It's kind of like I think this has been building up throughout the 21st century in America.
Wow.
This is why there's like things like, and on both sides, the Russia conspiracy stuff, the QAnon stuff, even back
Please,
to like,
come on.
9/11 truth, like loose
The
change
damn
and stuff
warp.
like that. People are when there's so
Fine.
many lies being told by
Very
powerful
good.
people are very open to the idea that they're
The
lying
warp,
about
that would've
a
been
bunch more
29.
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that's most dangerous about finding out that intelligence.
I gotta play a little more for
involved in
29. Let's do that.
Because
Tiny
it
bit
makes
more.
people even more suspect to propaganda, more suspect that they're less likely to trust the government now than ever before.
Yeah.
And the rise of a far-right candidate is more likely now, I think, than probably ever been before.
Yeah, I think that's
Some no-nonsense person that people can get behind.
Yeah, well, sometimes sometimes I'll see like the most insane of like the woke shit. Like whatever it is, you'll be like it's like some like drag queen giving a lap dance to like a 6-year-old or something,
Right.
and you're just like, this is like, it's like my first thought is like, this is the most outrageous, appalling thing I've ever seen. And then my second thought, almost like not even second, it's like that's one, and then 1A is like, oh my God, we're gonna live under a right-wing dictatorship. Because, man, I am the most just freedom, liberty-loving person, and it's like you're trying to turn me into a right-wing, like, dictator. Like, you see this stuff and you're like, oh my God, the reaction against this is gonna, and this was the thing that Jordan Peterson, like, initially warned about. If you remember when he first, those videos where he was arguing with those social justice warriors out there, and he goes, you are poking something and you have no idea what you're poking. You have no idea what the response to this is gonna be. And that's still a big concern.
Yeah, and people, when they have an idea
Come
in
on.
their head, like this progressive ideology that they think is so important that it needs to take over the world, and they're trying to indoctrinate.
And it must be
people into
imposed
it.
on other people's
Yes.
children.
And these people have control of a lot of the big tech corporations, which is wild. Like the ethics of that particular
And a lot of the public
ideology.
schools.
Yes.
That's like a thing. You remember when the Justice Department called those angry parents terrorists?
It's crazy.
Well, but there's almost like two things to it, right? There's like one. At first, you're like, well, that's crazy, right? That's insane to call them terrorists. But then the second part of it, you're almost kind of like, I kind of get it, because there is something. I do remember seeing some of those videos and the anger in these parents, But it's like that's the thing, like I'm like I'm lucky enough. I got little kids, and I'm gonna keep them away from all this stuff. Like I'm able to do that. But a lot of people aren't in that situation. and like their kids are in these public schools and they have no other option. You know what I mean? Like they pay their property taxes. I don't have any more money left over to send my kids to private school. Like this is where they have to go to school. And like you mess with people's kids, that's something people will do really fucked up shit over. You know what I mean? Like that's a different line for somebody. Like people can put up with a lot, but like you're gonna brainwash my kid with some ideology that I don't believe in, that I might even hate. And you're gonna like try to brainwash my little kid with that.
Okay, I'll probably call it a night. 102.
And to deny that that's a possibility is to you don't understand humans. Children are very malleable. They always have been. That's how you can get children to be religious martyrs. Like, how do you think they talk those kids into strapping
what up,
themselves up
Sour?
with dynamite and walking into
doing,
some
man?
building and blowing themselves up?
How you doing, my buddy?
They do it through coercion.
I got
They teach
30.
them.
It's not too bad. I wanted to get
they
sub
can
30,
get a
which is like
person
really, really
to-
good run.
You can
All
get a
good here, yo.
child
Nice.
to
I'm glad,
subscribe to
man.
all sorts of
Yeah.
ideologies,
Hope
hateful
you're doing well with the
ideologies,
hurricane
loving
shit,
ideologies.
man. I'm
People
about to
are
sign off
malleable.
though.
We imitate
I'm
our
about to sign off in like a minute or
Particularly children.
two.
I mean, children are. They're. I
Hope
mean,
you're
they
doing
do
okay with the
nothing
hurricane
but
stuff,
imitate. You
dude.
particularly
Yeah,
see this if you're
pass.
ever around
Oh,
little
good,
kids.
man.
My
Nice.
point is,
but-
it's like this is for good or for bad.
Yes.
That's not like.
Glad to hear,
even though
dude.
you think you're doing a good thing, you're still not doing what you're supposed to do.
Glad to hear,
What you're
man.
supposed to do
Yo, you're
as
looking
an
fucking
educator
jacked. Also
is
on
teach kids.
the
Teach
gram.
kids, give them
Keep at it,
information.
homie.
You're not supposed to be grooming them towards a particular ideology or lifestyle. I don't mean grooming.
Thanks,
in the
oh,
sense-
yeah,
no,
I
I know
mean
what
like
you're saying.
schooling them to behave a certain way, or to think a certain way, or to go against their parents' beliefs, or to go against.
Yeah, and if anything like that's, I mean, like,
That's not your job.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, it's not some government employee's job to instill the values into like 7-year-olds. Like that's on their parents, and if their parents are Christians or their parents are atheists or if their parents are left wing or right wing, that's like they have a right to like try to like, you know what I mean?
Especially
Like,
when it comes to sexual issues.
yeah, it's so bizarre. It's like, and just doing
Yo, buddy.
anything
Glad to hear,
sexual
man.
with little kids, like
Yeah,
any
here's
amount of
my take.
information like that.
Imagine if you had little kids in your class, 8, 9, 10 years old, and you started talking about male and female intercourse. Like people will go, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?" But there's books that kids can get out of the library in certain school districts that they've put in there that show like oral sex. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
You seen those books, like oral sex between two males, or a male and a female, or someone filleting a dildo, or something crazy like that?
Yeah, like it's very, it's so weird, man.
It's the wildest shit because, like, that's not your job. If we're talking about purely heterosexual relationships, we would all agree that is absolutely not a teacher's job to explain to a child what kind of sexual acts males and females.
Yeah, I'm gonna
like
sign off pretty soon.
that what turns
Got
them
pretty
on.
excited with
Like,
that
that's,
30
like,
run.
And-
Could have
and
been
one of the things
29
that's
if I
really
hit that
interesting,
final
right, is that,
warp.
like, and this is
Not
what's new
guaranteed
about
it would have
today's
been, but
dynamic, right? Is that,
could have been.
So then you'll see these people like in the corporate.
And I mean,
press
I don't know when I'm gonna
and
play
they'll
this
be like,
level again.
Oh, none of this.
I mean,
is
I will,
happening.
'cause it's
This
a
isn't
really, like,
happening at all."
landmark-
It's
not
like, oh,
landmark,
this
but
is
it's a really
different
good
world now, man.
benchmark
We have
level.
Libs of TikTok. You know what I mean? Like everyone, here you have this Twitter account that just blew the
Takes a
fuck
lot of
up
skill to
simply
shoot these
by
fucking
showing
cameras.
everybody. No,
Yeah.
these are their teachers, and this is what they're saying. Now, I'll admit, first, like when you see those videos, you don't always get the clearest like perspective of like, wait a minute, so how many teachers are like this exactly?
Right.
What schools are they? But regardless, this is a thing that's happening somewhere, and they have a lot of videos of them.
Right.
So whatever the size of the problem is, it's like, I don't know, there's a lot, and now there's no way, you can't convince people that this isn't really happening, because we can like see it ourselves. It's
And-
right here on video.
How did anybody ever sign off on the little kids drag show?
So,
How
like the
did
fact.
anybody imagine?
Maybe the most popular
again,
speedrun
the
game? Yeah,
heterosexual
probably.
version of that?
Mario
Imagine
64.
A bunch of
Actually, just
strippers
bought a
that
Mario
are in their
64
30s and
Japanese
40s,
cartridge to
and
see if I
they're
can
getting
try and
young
get some more
girls to strip
viewers.
and dance for men in the audience. Imagine.
I've never
imagine-
speedrun Mario in my life.
If you ever saw that, that would be a horrendous thing. Like, what are you encouraging? Like, what are you doing to these children? Why are you taking away their innocence at such an early
Oh,
age?
well, yeah.
But if it's a drag show,
Also, probably the
and you
hardest.
have like a 10-year-old drag queen.
Super
and he
Mario's
goes out
much
there and
harder.
he's
Not- I can't say it's harder than
fabulous,
GoldenEye
amazing.
because
It's
it's top,
but
man.
you're
Super Mario's
sexualizing
super
this
friggin'
young
hard, man.
person. You're still doing something to someone who hasn't even gone through puberty, and they're probably not even interested in sexual activity.
It's
They
just,
probably
it's
don't-
so disgusting,
I mean,
man.
what does a
And
fucking
wrong.
10-year-old care about sexual activity? But that's what I mean, if you're wearing high heels and a skimpy little bikini, and you're dancing in a certain way. We've got to admit what that is. Like, what is that? What is that if it's a girl who's built like a brick shit house? Well, it's very sexual, right?
Right.
If it's the same girl dressed that way, moving that way, and she has a big boobs and a big ass and all that stuff, it's sex. So is it sex with this little kid? And how are you okay with that?
And why do you want to do this? Why
Oh
do you
my
wanna
God, come
watch
on,
it?
baby.
And how the hell
Please.
do we not at least have a consensus amongst about this?
That
we're
seems
against
so
this.
crazy.
We could disagree on so
Fine.
many issues, but can't we all agree with like not sexualizing little kids?
But for whatever reason, if you're doing that in
What is
like
this?
LGBTQ,
Yo, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Did you see that?
like
Did you see how
with
bullshit
the
that
drag
is?
queen show.
It's such
like
fucking
they're still
bullshit.
doing some of them.
Yeah.
They still have like where drag queens and little kids are together. Like,
It's such
what was
bullshit. This,
Gyges?
like,
Yeah.
wow,
There was that
yeah,
Netflix show.
exactly.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
a
yeah.
Like,
Netflix
it's
show
it might not have been
about
paced, but
children
just like it's
that
so
are
dumb.
like drag queens.
Is that what it was? I thought
Wasn't
that was.
it?
I think that was girls in Cuties. Was just little girls.
Like,
It was just girls.
Very bizarre.
what?
Which one was the drag queen show? Wasn't there a show that had
So
Cuties was all
dumb.
little girls?
I think so.
Did I
Thanks,
fuck that
man.
up? Might have to
Thanks for
edit that out. I don't want
commiserating.
I think. I
So-
think it was.
So Cuties was just young girls.
Yeah, I think it was like 10-year-old girls just dancing in crazy sexual ways.
And what was it about? Was it about they would do dance shows?
I'll be honest, I
You're
did
a
not
woman
watch it.
now? Like, what is this? But I remember people got fucking furious at this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like
So this is-
incredibly
this is
little
nuts. So I'm-
prepubescent girls
Right.
dancing in the most sexualized ways.
But there have been these public, like these things that have been shown publicly, that are drag queen shows
Yes.
with kids.
Yes.
Now, what are those? Are those on film?
That
The-
was something, and I was getting at that.
Well, those I think are just
CBC
things
show.
that they have, like just like things that they have at local, like for like Pride Month, they had a bunch of them.
But there's a different thing between a kid maybe watching a drag show and being involved in it.
There's a different thing there. They're both kind of weird, but
Both
one
kind
is
of
much
weird,
worse.
but one is way worse.
Yeah.
But there have been ones where
Yes,
the kids were
yes,
involved,
yes.
right?
No, I've seen those videos being shared.
What is that?
I don't know what the events were, but I have seen those videos. There's not just like
Like
one
what?
thing. Like there's been a lot
Like
of videos
what?
of this that have been shared, and it is
Guys,
Yeah, it's I remember.
Imagine like proposing that to someone.
Yeah, and it does seem like
Drag kids, that's it. A daring and touching portrait of 4 kids.
struggle's
chasing
real, but it's so
freedom and
stupid
friendship
because
in the art of
you think you
drag.
just get shot into the rail, but no, you get shot around and
So
like.
that was on CBC. Oh, bro. Just, I mean, that's a really young kid. Like, imagine that young kid, okay? And what he wants to talk about is how he likes to fuck. So, like, he has like a rubber girl on stage, and he's like, "This is how I like to fuck. Can't wait till I'm old enough to fuck." That would be so insane. That would be
Yes.
so insane. So, imagine, why is it? Like, what's going on? Like, if you dress up like a girl, then it's okay to be sexualized when you're 10? Like, is it sexual or is it just performative as a girl?
It's like there's a million ways to do performative stuff that wouldn't have to be sexualized. Like
But
just do it in a
drag-
different way.
Is drag inherently sexual, or are we ignorant to it?
No, I don't know, man. I mean, like, it's not like, I guess theoretically it could not be, but they're not dressing up like Mrs. Doubtfire or something. They're dressing up as like these sexualized characters. That's like what's actually happening.
Exactly. They're dressing up in these revealing outfits. They're like little dresses with. They show their legs, right?
Yeah, it's like it's so goddamn weird. I don't know how this stuff took off. But then there was, I said something about this like when this stuff was coming out, and I got people like giving me pushback and stuff. Where there's like people on Twitter and stuff who were like, oh, but I bet you wouldn't have a problem. I was like, oh, there's this 6-year-old at this drag show or something like that. And they're like, oh, I bet you wouldn't have a problem, bringing your 6-year-old to Hooters. And I was like, well, first off, I wouldn't bring my 6-year-old to Hooters because I do think that's kind of inappropriate. But second off, it's not nearly as inappropriate. It's like there's just levels to this. Like,
Exactly.
no, if the girls in Hooters were in thongs and giving lap dances, yes, that would be just
Are you
as
serious?
inappropriate as this. And even Hooters, I probably wouldn't bring my little kids
Like,
to
it's-
Hooters.
Yeah.
That
why
does
would
seem
you
a
go-
little
What?
weird.
Why are you going to Hooters?
Just
It's
seems
so
weird.
dumb.
Like, that'd be a weird thing. I like want to be there with my young. I wouldn't want my
take 'em to
daughter
Chuck
to
E.
like
Cheese,
see.
you fucking
Yeah,
weirdo.
yeah. Like that's
It's
just
just
like
a weirdo move.
Like,
Even
it's-
if it wasn't gross, it would
yeah.
be a weirdo move.
Yes. Like why?
They don't
why
want to
do
go
this?
there.
Yeah, this is so bizarre.
Beer and wings and people screaming. Right?
Yeah, and like girls are wearing like scantily clad outfits.
Dude, that's not thought to be like a family environment anyway. It's a dumb suggestion.
Because like, they'd always like come up with this thing. They're like, well, what about this? They go like, well, what about child beauty pageant shows? I'm like,
Those
I
are
find those
creepy, too.
weird. I find them very weird and creepy.
Joey Diaz, Duncan, and I, maybe it was ours. Well, anyway, we were in Dallas, and we're doing Dallas improv. As an improv, we're staying at this hotel that had a drag queen show. No, excuse me, child beauty show. We're staying at a hotel that had a child beauty show. But,
yes.
But not by much. So we're walking around the hotel, and there's these little kids with high heels, and they can barely walk, and they're wearing skirts, and they're just full clown makeup, crazy hair, and I'm like, bro, this is strange.
It's like, why would you do this with your kids?
I think pretty sure it was Duncan. I remember us talking about it. We were like, this is so bizarre. And by the way, of course we were high as fuck. High as fuck. Wandering through this hotel while these little kids that are dressing up like Fox News ladies.
Yeah.
You know those like super hot Fox News lady outfits? That's like what they're wearing. So they're not dressed up
Okay,
like
I'm probably gonna sign off in like a minute.
So bizarre.
Thanks for being here.
Bizarre. First of all, it's bizarre.
No, my stick is just all fucked too. I like
word
out it
as opposed to a
almost.
male. If a male got on television with a sleeveless shirt, showing his the center of his pecs and showing most of his legs, except for what I call like with Megyn Kelly, a vagina curtain. I go,
Okay, have a good night.
It's
Going tomorrow, yo, you too, dude.
Windows always open.
Thanks, man.
It's
Thanks, Harley.
Grandma's kitchen.
Thanks, buddy.
It's a tiny little thing that covers these long, beautiful legs, and you see her toes and her feet, and her legs are crossed. Because if she opens her legs up, you're basically seeing a thin shield over her vagina.
Like what?
Right? She's a pair of panties. That's it. It's nuts.
And then that woman's now going to tell you the news.
That one's going
And
to
she's
tell
like,
you the news. She's just
the
any moment
ambassador
now.
to Afghanistan said that the losses have been insurmountable over the like what? What is
so
happening here?
crazy.
Why would we do this?
Yeah, it's so weird. And
then
I
I'll
like
tell
the
you
way
other-
it looks, and I'm not opposed to it.
No, I get
Don't
you.
get me wrong. I'm glad women dress like that. It looks great. Don't get me wrong. But it's just so strange.
A lot of it's strange. I'll tell you, not in the sexualized way at all, but this another thing that I find very bizarre that I always judge is the guys, like in the cable news things, who color their hair and like get like work done and stuff like this, and you're like, you're a fucking newsman, I thought. What are you doing?
They don't
Like,
wanna
wouldn't it
look
be
old.
better if you had a little gray in your hair? You should look old. I'm not like trying to fuck you, dude. I'm trying to get the news. That's the idea. Just
think
like,
they
why do you
just-
care about what you look like?
They have vanity. They're on TV every day. They see
Because they're not
themselves
newsmen.
deteriorate.
They're like celebrities or whatever.
They're people who read teleprompters. All you have to do is be a good orator. You just have to be reasonably good to look at, and you know your voice doesn't suck.
Yeah.
You know, or you know.
And you're willing to say the thing that they tell you to say.
Or you fit into like what they're looking for, whatever it's a right-wing show or a left-wing show. You know, there's like a fucking thing they're looking for, the thing that they think is going to sell to their people. Just tell the people what we tell you to tell them. Put it up on the screen. Can you read? Okay, let's do a dry run. Here you
Holy
go,
shit,
go.
that
And then
warp.
You do it. You got it. Okay. All right, here we go. And you're live. And then you say it, and then that's what you do. You know, it's like they're actors in a way. They're just
Fucking A, it
chosen
might be
to
it.
act in this manner.
It might be it. It might be a
You know,
30
this is
dupe
the
again.
role. The role
30
is I
knew
am a
it.
right-wing pundit.
Because I'm not hitting the
Is
warp.
I am, MSNBC anchor.
Yep. No,
That's what's so crazy.
at least for the vast majority of them. There are a few exceptions of
Oh, there's
people
a
who are
lot of
like
exceptions.
somewhat good, but it's unbelievable
But the
how many are
position
them.
is clearly established.
Damn it.
And it's segmented by advertisement to make sure that nothing ever gets too deep.
Yeah. And there's just more, and I think Noam Chomsky
sucks.
like went over this back in the
warp.
day, but how the advertising just gets longer and longer, and the
Yeah.
segments get shorter and shorter, and just what they're saying gets dumber and dumber. It's it's unbelievable.
It's all pharmaceutical ads now. When you watch, it's all pharmaceutical.
Yeah, there might be like a Boeing commercial in
Every
there
now and then
somewhere,
they
you
throw in
know.
like an Oreos commercial.
Yeah.
That's
Just
selling
like-
cookies or something.
Yeah, pharmaceutical, because we just care about your health. But have an Oreo, by the way.
So nuts. And it's like you see a stampede just headed towards a cliff, and you're like, how do we slow everybody down? How do we make this sustainable? How do we realize that we are temporary beings? We have a finite lifespan. and we are somehow involved in these squabbles with places that are nowhere near us, with people that we have never met. And somehow or another, we are inexorably tied to these activities that are taking place on the other side of the world.
And particularly the fact that they pose no threat to you and that you're a part of the biggest, baddest, most powerful society that's ever existed. And they're a part of like these very weak, vulnerable societies. And yet you're convinced that. But this is why I say, I think the ultimate like optimistic thing is that all trust in all of these institutions is completely evaporating. And there's something, you know, a lot of people talk about how like we need to like unify the country and like we're so polarized and wouldn't it be better if we were more united, which I understand like the idea of that. But if I think the most united times in my lifetime, the time the country was the most united was right after 9/11. Where like everyone was really together.
Yeah.
And then the politicians just exploited that and gave us the Patriot Act and the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan and this whole disastrous, start to the 21st century. And then I actually think everyone was pretty united when COVID first came. And it was like 14 days to 15 days to flatten the curve. Okay, we'll give you guys a couple weeks. And then the politicians exploited that and just took advantage of the whole thing. And so it's like there's real weakness to being united. Maybe it's better, at least if we're united, let's be united in not trusting any of the institutions.
Well, again, they suck at everything. They suck. They're going to suck at this too. They're not going to make decisions that are good for all of us.
But this is to me basically the libertarian argument is that it's like we don't suck at everything. Like the free market, like voluntary, like people, we actually do amazing things. We do so many things so well, but everything the government touches, they're terrible at. Or they're really good at it, but it's incredibly evil. Like, we're really good at slaughtering people. It's like, that's true. You are very good at that.
Yeah, they're pretty good at that, and they get better at it every year.
Yeah.
What's the defense budget? Like, what's the amount of money that's involved in these decisions?
I mean, I think
crazy.
On the books, I think it's like $700 billion, but if you look at all of the things that are also basically part of it, it's over $1 trillion a year.
Is there a way to redistribute that money to make it so that they can make that kind of money cleaning up cities? Each year, federal agencies receive funding from Congress known as budgetary resources. In 2022, the Department of Defense had $1.77 trillion distributed amongst its 6 subcomponents. Agencies spend available budgetary resources by making financial promises called obligations. 1.77 trillion.
It could be in one of the 6, but the nuclear program is not part of the Department of Defense.
Right. So
Department.
Yeah. So that cost isn't even included.
Look at that number though, 1.77 trillion.
Okay, no. I think I'm done for the night because like now it's just like memeing.
1.77 trillion distributed.
Yeah, see that I think that's more what I was thinking, that it would be somewhere at
Like
700
no, I don't want to do this anymore.
But then if you
I'll
take
do one
into
more
account
try.
Jamie
If
was
I
talking
don't
about
kill
the
this
energy
camera,
department, like nuclear maintenance
I'm done.
and stuff. But regardless, I mean, it's an insane amount of money. It's an insane
Whether
amount
it's
of money.
777 billion or whatever the fuck it is, that is so much money.
Yeah. And you notice, and the funny thing is, like, we end the war in Afghanistan, and like the budget doesn't even go down. It's like you end a war, and they just find out.
Crazy LOL.
If you have that much money being distributed in 1 year, imagine just cutting that off.
Well, yeah, I mean that would be something, but honestly, even just cutting it off, I think would be overall. Like,
Okay, yeah, fuck this level.
Yeah.
Okay,
Could you
I'm gonna take the 30. I'm gonna take the 30 to the bank. It's not worth anything,
Someone
but
actually tried to cut that off.
it's
First
progress.
of all, you can never cut it off totally. You have to have some support in the military.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Thank you.
what's the
Thanks for
budget?
being here.
Well,
Star
look,
slash
even
dick,
if the
everybody.
budget was 0 next year, we still have the most powerful military in the history of the world.
Right, but then you got to pay people. To
So
run
there's
it.
going to be
It's like
some,
you
there's going to be
need a
some
budget.
maintenance or something like that, sure. But let's just say hypothetically, I mean, look, there are we spend more than I think like the next 13 countries combined or something like that on our defense budget. So let's just say we cut it in half, hypothetically. I think probably my guess is like, yeah, there'd be enormous pushback from all of the special interests who are losing their money. So in other words, the only way it could work is if someone...
Dickuscan
let's
is
say the
online
person
and
who
he's
won
streaming. He's
the
streaming
presidency
ASMR.
won
Follow him.
by running
if you can
on,
do
I'm
a
going to
favor,
cut
he's trying to
the
get
defense budget
affiliate.
and got overwhelming
If you could
support
keep
for
your
it.
browser
Because then if
open,
there was so much support for it,
and
it
like
could
you
be
can just
kinda like,
mute,
no matter how
you
much you
can
push
just
back,
mute his
it's
random
just not gonna
ASMR.
matter.
It's gonna be
That
really
being said,
random.
I don't really think
I'm not
there's
saying I
gonna be a
understand it either,
centralized
but
federal political solution. I think what's much more likely to happen in this
Anyways,
country is that
thanks
this
for
system
being
is
here.
going to
I'm gonna
fail
go
and
though.
fail and fail
30,
more.
it's not bad.
Hopefully at that point,
Pretty
you get
happy
more and
with
more
that.
decentralization.
Pretty good
and just
session.
like different
Pretty good
areas are going to like not follow federal guidelines and things like that. And just kind of like, because I just don't see it, like to your point, there's so much entrenched powerful interest in Washington, D.C. It's very hard to see someone rolling it back from there without a huge movement behind them.